Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting to order. If you'll please stand and join me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move on to delegations. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to address the Board of Finance regarding any item that is on the agenda this evening, now is the time to do that. Would anybody like to address the audience? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. First, for the regular meeting of February 12th, 2020. Any comments, corrections from anybody? Okay, I actually had one correction, and this is to paragraph 1 on page 2, where it begins, Mr. Bassett said that technically they have to the end of this month, and with an extension, they would have to the end of next month. I would like to specifically add to that paragraph the following language. Ms. Alberti acknowledged that our town is trending in the right direction with regard to closing our books earlier over the past few years, and thanked Ms. Johnson and Mr. Bassett for their efforts in this regard. 2 years ago, the books were closed by July. Last year, the books were closed by May. And this year, the audit will be filed by the end of February. For fiscal year end 6/30/2020, we will have a performance objective in place to have the books closed by 12/31/2020. Is everybody okay with that change? Okay. Karen, I have the language here, so you don't have to write it down. Also, on page 3, paragraph 5, where it says Ms. Chicello noted that Lyme, old Lyme. Actually, that was myself, Ms. Alberti, that noted that at the last meeting. So page 3, where it says Ms. Chicello noted that Lyme, old Lyme refinanced their long-term debt. So actually, that was me that recommended Ms. Johnson looking into that. And if there's no other corrections, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, the regular meeting minutes of February 12th of 2020.
Second.
As amended.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, great. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Great. Motion carries. Next are the special meeting minutes of Thursday, February 20th, 2020. This was the special meeting that the Board of Finance had with the Library Foundation. Any comments, corrections, concerns? If there aren't any, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move to approve the East Lyme Board of Finance special meeting minutes of Thursday, February 2020.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Great. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Great. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the report section of our agenda, we will first hear from a member of the Board of Education or the superintendent, whoever chooses.
Yeah, I'll Sorry, Mr. Bauman is here with me. Thanks very much. Just a few quick updates. School projects, elementary school projects. We're still having town building committee meetings, still running through punch list items that are coming forth, closing in on ending those soon, which is a good thing. Dollar-wise, money that we did not go out and ask for as part of the $37.5 million, money, uncommitted funds that we don't need, $436,000, almost $437,000. We've done everything that we feel is appropriate and meets the needs of our kids. So I think that's a good thing. We're not going and requesting any further funds at this time. There could be something else that might pop up that the building committee finds, but hopefully that's where the number sits, and we'll see where it lands over the next month or two. And not sure when those meetings will end, the building committee meetings, but hopefully in the next couple months we'll be winding down and eventually closing out those projects. So so that's just kind of an update on the building projects. We haven't provided that in a while. The other piece I wanted to just share out, everyone is aware with COVID-19 and the coronavirus that we're dealing with. We have sent out correspondence to all of our parents and students and community in relation to things that we are putting in place, trying to limit activities in the schools that are 100 individuals or less. No more than 100 people coming together or congregating in one sitting. So plays, concerts, etc., all are canceled right now through April 30th. There is a good chance that this virus will grow, individuals will become infected, and schools could be closed. There's already 4 or 5 across the state that are closed now, so that's scary. Distance learning is being talked about. Waivers from the State Department of Education are being discussed. Or use your April vacation, tack on days at the end of the year. By law, we cannot go past June 30th for a school year, and you have to meet the 180-day mark. So students have to be in the building, have to step in the building for 180 days for it to count. So if we request a waiver to not meet that 180-day mark, I'm not sure if that will be approved. If we do have to go in a direction of distance learning, which some districts or all colleges are or not all, but many colleges have gone in that direction. They can do that. Students have laptops, students have accessibility to technology. We can't meet those needs for students right now. We could not just say, everybody get on a laptop or a device, and we're going to have teachers teach from home or wherever they might be. So that's hence part of our focus and work through our budget to increase our technology needs. But with that being said, we would have to prepare, other alternatives, and we're in the process of doing that, for students if we do have lengthy closures. It'll be packets of work and different things. It's not going to be new learning. It's going to be just extending the current learning that is taking place. So that's where we are right now. Again, this is evolving daily for us and the town as well. And I've been talking with our first selectman, and we're continuing to do all we can for precautions across our buildings. Cleaning, that sort of thing as well. So our custodians are diligently doing it, as our teachers too, in classrooms, trying to wipe down surfaces and so forth. So that's about it. That's really been my existence the last couple of days. It's been nothing but coronavirus, unfortunately. But I just wanted to kind of give you that little update on the building projects. We should probably come back in some capacity and give a full update of where the final financials, land with what we used of the full $37.5 million, because it doesn't look like we're going to be using all of it, which I think is a good thing. It shows we came in under budget, worked very hard through those projects. Town building committee did a great job, everybody involved, so we're happy with that. So, any questions at all? Yes.
Just a quick question. When you ask for a waiver, is that like a general, anything less than 180 days, or do you ask for a
Exactly.
specific time frame?
It's waiving the requirement to meet 180 school days is what the waiver would give you.
Okay.
So, yeah, we've never really gotten this far in the process, and the state has in my opinion, doesn't have any interest in granting these, but they're probably might be having to if, folks can't meet the 180-day mark. 2 years ago, there was a number of towns that ran into multiple inclement weather days, as well as some tornadoes and things that really caused a lot of excessive days. At that point, they were trying to get waivers, and the state didn't grant them. schools went right up to June 30th almost, and had to make other, alternative arrangements. So they're not in the business of wanting to grant those by any way, shape, or form. This could be an exception. We'll see where it takes us, but it'll be challenging to have to close school buildings and everybody home, potentially with kids and families. But we'll do what we need to do. So, yeah.
Would the state hold back money if they granted a waiver?
I don't know. It's a good question. We're worried about special education services and not being able to provide those, and the fallout potentially of that. Because there's students that are mandated in their state, individual education plans that they're to receive daily services, whether it be physical therapy or whatever, occupation, whatever it might be. And if we can't provide those, how do we either make that up or what do we do in that sense? So there's a lot of, what ifs, paraprofessionals, are we going to send paraprofessionals all home and not pay them for potentially a month and a half? So there's so many, red flags in the air that, we don't know what to do yet, but we're just going to follow the guidance, continue to follow the guidance of the Health Department as well as the State Department of Ed. So, any other specific questions? And we'll be back to you on April 2nd.
So for the delivery of the packets, if we have to go that route, will they be transported to different families' homes, or will they be mailed out, or?
We're not
Any
sure.
thoughts?
It could be emailed, Rich. It
Yeah.
could be, there's a consortium right now. Our assistant superintendent has been daily the last couple of days working with Learn. There's about 9 or 10 districts across the area that have been going to Learn each day for a couple hours
Right.
and are working on just this thing,
Oh, okay.
kind of creating a library of work that students could be potentially doing.
Excellent.
How they're accessing that, though, is the question, because you send kids home and some of them don't have access to the internet or computers. They can't get the information or print it out themselves. How do we, if something happens quick and we have to close schools immediately, how do we get those packets to them? I guess, we could mail them, or, that's all to be kind of determined. So
Right.
things are just evolving by the hour. We're trying to keep up with it. So,
Thank you.
yeah. So we'll see where it goes. But thanks. We look forward to,
Just one thing, Jeff. When you come back on April 2nd and present the budget, I'm wondering if you would be able to provide us with some information about excess capacity at Lily B. Haynes, if there is anything with the vacancy of Learn, and if there's anything that is in the works in terms of turning around that space maybe to somebody else for, rental purposes or.
Yep, I can just tell you briefly right now, because the Board of Ed has talked about it openly in public session.
Sure.
That it's not occupied right now, other than a few of the classrooms down there being used for some intervention work with students. But there's been a lot of discussion at the board level, and it's gone quite a little bit right now. But a few months back, talking about preschool for next year, maybe trying to expand preschool services and utilize those rooms. There hasn't been, because of that, we kind of put on hold any outreach to outside organizations that might want to rent it like Learn used to do. So that's to say that might not come back to fruition, but at this point that's where it stands. That will come back around by the end of this year or over the summer when we start talking about our goals for next year with the board, and one of the board's goals could be looking at preschool expansion for next year.
Okay.
So
Very
that's where
good.
we're at right now. But yeah, I know that was a good revenue, about $62,000 a year, I believe, that we were receiving from Learn, and I know we offset a little bit with bringing Coastal back and not renting that space
Right.
for $30,000, but still, it'd be great to potentially use it in some capacity again.
Mhm.
So, but some of the rooms aren't in use right now.
Okay, very good. Thank
Okay?
you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who can answer it. So you said there might be $436,000 that were uncommitted?
That's the uncommitted funds as of right now. Yes.
So if, let's say, you spend a little bit more of it and there's more left, can that go towards the budget for next year, possibly?
And
Is
I
that
don't know,
something, or can that, or does that, no?
Yeah, you
Or does that have to go
can't.
back into, where would that go then?
So actually, with regards to the school projects, initially we do short-term financing and then we do long-term financing. So with
Mhm.
regards to the total financing package, we're doing the long-term financing over multiple years.
Okay.
So the plan let's see, in 19, we bonded $10 million of the projects. And then in 2 prior fiscal years, we did some small portions. I believe in 1 year we did about 1.5 million, and the second year was about a little over 4 million. So we've already done some incremental bonding for the project.
Mhm.
We're scheduled to bond another 10 million in August of this year, and then the following year we would look to bond the final portion. So we would just not have to fully bond the total amount. And then we're also awaiting some state construction grant funds as well. They have been very slow in coming in.
Regarding the schools?
Correct.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So many thanks again, to everybody, involved in that process and, working that budget down, for selectmen and everybody else as well. I think we made the right choice. And, we don't have everything we want in the schools, but we really did well in getting, most everything. So appreciate it.
Yeah, please extend our thanks to the building committee too. It
Yeah.
sounds like they did a really fine job.
They really did.
And I know they're volunteers too,
They
so
are.
it takes a lot of effort to really stay on top of that, so.
Ray O'Connor, especially,
Yeah.
who's been the chair. We recognize him at the board meeting this past Monday night, and just so many hours on his own accord, putting together, working with Anna, coming down to the town. I don't know how many times, Anna, he's been down to see you. Maybe it's been weekly, but daily. But he really went above and beyond, as did the whole committee. So,
Mhm. Very good. Okay, thank you.
thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you on the
Jeff.
2nd.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the report from the first selectman.
Evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
I would, normally would start with the budget conversation, but coronavirus is front and center with all of us, right? So, I have you know that your table was wiped down tonight before the meeting, as was ours here. This is a big joke, but it's true, and we're thinking all this out. We're planning. We're not panicking. We're doing a lot of what-if scenarios, because who knows where this goes and how long it goes. There's essential work that needs to be done in a town, and then there's things that can be delayed, put off, and we'll catch up. So we're trying to determine how to collect taxes if there's nobody in the tax office. How to register or record conveyances, house conveyances. That's not the word, but transfer of property if there's nobody working in the clerk's office. Or do we work and lock the doors and don't let the public in, but do some essential work? There's all sorts of scenarios that we're working through. We have an election coming up. We have the primary coming up in a month, 2 months. Next month in April, and we're obviously planning for more absentee ballots. But what if public spaces are closed down? What happens? And we'll be getting our direction from the state there. We're securing essential personnel plans, and what can wait and what can't. We're establishing mutual aid relationships with other towns, because if there's an outbreak in one town, another town might be able to pick up the slack or provide workspace for our workers to go somewhere else. And we can do the same for other towns. Alternate work voting plans, as I mentioned, is in place, and we're getting that direction from the state. That is a major task. It seems like most of the primary stuff is kind of getting to be settled, but still, people have a right to come out and vote, and they should be able to exercise that right. As you hear, the schools are preparing for what-if scenarios. So they haven't reacted yet, and I really appreciate that. But they put a message out today to the parents about to be prepared, because these things could happen. We're literally daily on conference calls with and getting updates from the CDC, from the Department of Public Health, from Ledgely Health District, who's been wonderful in their outreach, from the governor's office, from COG, from CCM. People are on the phone, they're talking about what happens. We've altered and prioritized our cleaning immediately. That's not planning, that's doing it now. We might vacuum a lot less, and we might wipe down a lot more. So doorknobs, especially bathrooms, railings, and table counters and tabletops. We're focusing on that. Ledgelight Health District is coming in tomorrow for an all hands on deck for department heads for a meeting with them for their spaces. I'd like the department heads to go back and kind of control their space. If they have a lot of foot traffic in there, they should be wary of that, aware of that, and we will give them the necessary cleaning products to make sure that those counters are being wiped down even more so, and to be on the lookout for that, and be on the lookout for sick people as well, and then to address and make warning to our custodial staff when there's an immediate need. But Ledgelight's going to come in tomorrow and talk about all this, and then also the what-if scenarios. Most likely, we'll schedule an emergency operations center meeting next week. Up until yesterday, I would have thought that's premature, but things are happening very quickly with states of emergency. And we're seeing across the country colleges going to online and all that. So emergency operations center meeting for no other reason that again, to identify essential personnel, but essential tasks. There's a lot of homebound people in our town. There's a lot of people with oxygen tanks that get deliveries and such, and those businesses might have a hiccup. So we have all those folks on a list, and we want to make sure that's up to date, and we want to make sure our volunteer list is robust, because we're going into a pandemic that's, I think, the first in my lifetime, and it's certainly the first in a long time that we've had to think ahead on this larger scale. We're really good at hurricanes, big storms, power knocked out for 10 days, and we do the same stuff. What can wait? What can't wait? What's essential personnel? Who can stay at home? But here we are, and this could be months, and it just could be a couple weeks. And public meetings. What does that mean for us, right? Certainly, if public buildings are encouraged to be closed, we can do electronic meetings. There's a provision that allows us to do that, an emergency provision. But we have a public meeting coming up, I think on the 27th of April. You'll have the public hearing. Generally, it's in the high school. I think it's over in the middle school. But what if it needs to be done electronically? And we'll make provisions for that. Thankfully, our budget itself goes to automatic referendum. So while we still have a need for a public hearing after your meeting, it automatically goes to public hearing, to referendum. We do vote on the capital plan, and maybe the capital has to wait. If that's the case, maybe we have to have a public meeting where people are actually in the audience voting for the capital plan. We'll discover that later. We have lawyers talking about that. We have COG people talking about that. People at the state talking about that. So that's really the update on the where we are with the coronavirus. Things are moving very quickly, like the superintendent said. We've been kind of all watching and waiting and seeing and buying toilet paper and all that stuff. But it seems to be really kind of getting in our face now. Really starting to become a reality, where we have 3 cases in Connecticut, and we'll see, it seems inevitable that number will grow to a much larger number. Any questions on that first? Maybe I'll split my comments up. Any
Yes,
questions?
how do we prepare if this, going into budget season with all the meetings that the Board of Finance has scheduled, if some people find it necessary to self-quarantine and call into a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
how do we do that? I know we've asked a few times in the past how we can get a phone up here for people to call in, and can we?
Yeah, we've been successful with that, or cell phones that work really good on speaker, and we've had meetings in some of the subcommittees had meetings like that. But not in this room.
Can
and-
you have Carmen ensure maybe by Monday during our next meeting that a phone is situated here in case people have to call in? And we can test that out before we have to
we'll look
rely
into
on
that.
it?
I'm sure there's a phone line. There was a phone line, so
Yeah.
it's just a matter of moving it from one office to another. But
Yeah.
we'll make sure that one might be available here.
Okay.
And there are emergency provisions for those kind of things, and I think we've entered into that where there is a state of emergency of public health, and a pandemic has been declared as of sometime during the day today. So I think all that is reasonable, and it's all about reasonable, right? It's common sense and reasonable. Please stay home if you're not feeling well, and you can call in or not. You know, there are 6 of you. We only need 4 to hold a quorum, and while your work is very important and all your opinions are important, so is public health. You know, and once, you know, the building has been infected by a documented volunteer or worker, and then we're going into a different level, aren't we? And then we're talking about the whole building being shut down. And you know, there are public buildings, of course, the schools. You know, kids in and out, and then they're off. You know, and they're working in other cities and towns, and friends and all that. Of course, sports is on hold right now, but our library has an incredible amount of people that are opening, pulling that door all day, and touching things and getting on the 20-something computers they have, and the counter and the books and all that, and of course the public bathroom is in there. So we're watching that carefully, and that might be high on the priority list as far as controlling the public health. And it's all about public health and public safety. So we put that as a priority, and we might have to, like the governor did yesterday, have to be proactive, and maybe it feels like we're doing things a little early, but erring on the side of caution is the rule of the day. And I think we're just heading into that place. Yeah. Any other questions on that?
I was going to say, I was speaking to my daughter,
Yeah.
and she was saying there's something called Zoom where you can they use it at her work where they just video conference in.
Yeah, yeah.
One person has to have like the webcam, and then everybody else just calls in.
Right.
And you can do it like that. So that's
Yeah,
an
GoToMeeting
option.
and Zoom
Yeah.
and all that. I mean, you don't have to see each
Yeah.
other's faces to
Yeah.
have a very productive meeting nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, it says something on social media that says, now we're really finding out how many of these face-to-face meetings we didn't need. You know, we're all doing teleconferencing now. So, yeah, and conferences are being canceled and seminars are, and, you know, it's getting widespread. So I agree, and that's something we might look into as well. Go to a meeting account or a Zoom account or something. We might even have that available with one of our packages. We just got the Windows 10. I'm sure there's a capability within the package. We'll talk to Carmen about that as well. That's where we are with coronavirus. Please, if you have any questions, call me between meetings, although we'll be back here, Monday night for a meeting. But call me, and many of you have my cell number. Just call if anything comes up. The budget's being delivered tonight. There's not much to say on it. You'll have a lot to say in the coming weeks, and that's good. I'm confident that you'll find the town side of the budget, because I can only speak to that. This is what we authored. Well thought out, well supported. Department heads really worked hard on the narrative. I think it's in front of you tonight. I can't see over the lip, but you're going to find that there's a lot of documentation there. There's a lot of back pages there, and they took that feedback, and I think we all will benefit from that. And they're anxious to come up here and defend their budget, if that's the right word. And it's a proud budget that we'll talk a lot about in the coming weeks, starting on Monday. Okay. So that's all my report tonight. Everything else is kind of status quo around here, sort of, kind of, not really, but there's all sorts of things going on, a lot of things going on in town. But you know, we work through the issues.
So is that the extent of the discussion on the 2021 budget, or will we revisit it under new business?
I will not have anything else to say myself.
Okay. So then I'll add just a question. I appreciate the extra effort for all of the commentary and the general government side of the budget. Do we have a list of comments from the Board of Selectmen with regard to the Board of Education budget?
Yeah, we had some comments, and we'll call that from the minutes of the meeting and lay them out in a bullet point fashion. There was a few comments on that. I think if you observed the meeting, or if you're paying attention, or saw some of the comments that the newspaper picked up on what I said, it's just you know, they're I'll deliver that, I think on the 4th when you're hearing them, or whatever date it is that you're hearing them, the
Well,
second.
how about Monday when we get the actual budget books for the Board of Ed? Can we have the list of bullet points at that point?
I'll get them to you, it might not be Monday, but I'll get them to you.
Okay.
Because we're meeting again, but I can get them out to you electronically. They'll be very short, there's a few comments. We didn't go through line by line, we heard it and we saw the number and some comments were made, and you'll get those in meeting
I did
format.
not have a chance personally to watch the whole meeting, but I did watch 20 minutes I caught where you mentioned pay for play, and that was the only thing that I had really heard.
Yeah, yeah, people would kill me for that.
Yeah, well, as you
I'm just-
know, our former Board of Finance member brought that up for 6 years.
Yeah.
Never went over
It,
too well.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong, and
It's
we'll
just
talk
an
about it
idea.
then, but it's just about, if we really gotta prioritize education, if you
Yeah.
really need 11 more people in your district,
Yeah.
well, what's gonna give? Well, maybe that has to give, and not to discount the value of sports and extracurricular. Many of us learned just as much outside the classroom as we did in, and certainly built our character. And we see that throughout our town with so many fine athletes and thespians and everything else, and musicians. But where's the give? That's all. It was just about what's the give. It's about the buy-in, right? It's the parents who are gonna come at you with pitchforks in their hands going, we wanna pay more taxes. And then the seniors who are going to come at you saying enough, and finding that balance. And the parents seem to want to have a buy-in. They almost want to have a buy-in. Give us a bill, we'll pay it. We value our education. And that's, well, we hear that a lot, right? We'd rather see taxes go up than cut our education quality.
They would, okay.
It was some of the comments we got last
Yep,
year.
yep.
right,
They
you
would
got
rather
last
see
year.
the taxes go up for everybody.
Well, yeah.
Not just themselves,
Sure.
just
Yeah.
to be
Oh, yeah.
clear. Otherwise, there's no difference between
Sure.
that or pay for play, if they're, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and in the same tone, we have talked about a tax abatement for seniors, which would put the burden onto the parents, but also those who have had kids in the system and don't any longer, but they haven't quite reached the golden age yet. It's met a lot of resistance, but it's also met some head scratching. Other towns do it in this state.
So I actually did hear you say that too,
Yeah. Yeah.
during the meeting. But what is, I mean, in all likelihood, what is the probability that that would get done for this budget season? A tax abatement for seniors?
Well, with the pushback I'm getting, 0, but I'm still encouraged. We've done the work. We have case studies from other towns and ideas that we could roll out. And my thought is $1,000 off for, if you're 65 or 35 years in town and 65, or maybe it's 70. Maybe we have to narrow that. It's really hard to do the actuarial number on that. You can count the number of people, you can figure that out, but how long they stay, and you'll never know. The great unknown is how many more years did that senior stay in his or her home or their home versus the young family moving in. We won't know unless we just do it. But we do know seniors would stay and be encouraged to stay. Especially if they're getting close to that 35 years or close to that 70, might as well stay in town. I'm almost ready to earn a little
Right,
bit of a break
right.
than go over to Waterford, who
Right.
pays just about as much taxes as we do. Maybe, and then, for every house that sells in this town, remember, every retiree that leaves, more than likely a young family's coming in
Yes.
with kids. So, encouraging the seniors to stay, but also giving them a break because the parents are saying, we want our quality education, and I do too, because that quality education, my kids are long gone. It's supporting our houses, it's supporting the value of our homes, and really separating us from other communities in this area because of our education, no doubt about it. And I get knocked for that all the time at COG meetings when I say our town is the best, but the Beach Boys did it, and be true to your school, right? It is what it is, and we'll have lots of discussions about this. But it's a robust budget, and
But
both sides.
in terms of us taking the big book home and
Mhm.
starting to study and analyze, we should not count on that program being implemented for the 2021 fiscal year.
I wouldn't think so.
Okay, everybody get that?
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. You know, if I hear next week that you really want the Board of Selectmen to say yay or nay on that, if you think it's a good idea, if you want to, instead of the budget discussion, want to alter your agenda tonight and have a conversation about that and give me a memo in the morning, say it went up, it went down, we want you at least, we want to encourage the Board of Selectmen to consider that, I'll put it on the next agenda.
Well, let me ask one more question in this regard. We already have an exemption in place for seniors under a certain
Right.
threshold of income. Would the Homestead Act that you're referring to be part of that
It would be an addition.
exclusion or a separate program altogether?
It'd be a separate program, would be, I don't think it would be
So it's not-
income, qualification, there wouldn't be income qualifications, which, you know, kind of would frustrate you a little bit to the folks that might be, you know,
So the other towns that you've looked at is really just based on age?
age and
number
longevity.
of years in town?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
and
And not income, you're saying, or income?
not?
Not income.
Not income.
I think
Okay.
some do. I think some do, but in a high, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but not millionaires.
Mm.
You know, so there's that.
And do you have a range of, I don't know what to call it, discounts or abatements or that you were looking at that you could share with us? So, does
Ye-
Waterford have a program?
No.
What do they offer?
No, there's some down the coast. I think it's Brantford, maybe Madison.
So is it a
many
fixed
in-state,
amount? Is it based on some
it-
sort of metric?
Some are fixed. There's a lot. They're
There's a
all
lot.
reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of different wheels and different ways of doing it. Lots of calculations for some towns and some very simple. You know, 35 years, 65 years old, $1,000. Regardless of the value of your home, you could be in a trailer that's worth $35,000, and you know you won't get money back, but you might get, you know, and it, you know, it could be, you know, Old Black Point. And you know, $50,000 tax bill, and we have those on single-family homes in our town. So,
Okay.
many, and that's why, you know, likelihood. You know, there's so many different scenarios and what's best, and then, you know, once you do it, you do it. You can't undo it. You can change it and adopt. You know, it needs to be done right. So
Right.
maybe not getting it done for July is probably the best way to plan on that.
Right, it's not something
It's
you want
huge.
to rush.
Right.
But-
Right. The work's been done on it though, and we could
Okay.
present it. Maybe I'll present it at some point. We're going to be very busy in the next month, so maybe after.
Maybe it's a summer
Yeah,
time
yeah,
initiative.
Yeah,
Ramp up for
indeed.
next year.
We'll do it by Zoom or whatever that video thing is.
Well, I get on the masks.
Okay,
Thank you.
any other comments?
Yeah, just, yeah, thanks. Actually, I did attend that Board of Selectmen meeting. I wanted to watch the presentation by Board of Education there. And I appreciated that all the members of the Board of Selectmen had not only questions but comments. And I thought they were pretty detailed. So I think whatever you summarize from that will be very helpful
Yeah.
to us. And I took notes as well, but I mean,
Great.
so that was good. And that it was, you know, definitely food for thought. So it was a combination of comment and commentary and question commentary. So that was good.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I thought so. It was a very healthy discussion that night.
Mm.
Went a couple hours.
Yeah.
Okay. If there's no further questions for the first selectman, we'll move on to the Director of Finance report.
Oh, good evening. So this evening, I'd like to start with the unassigned fund balance report, which you received in your packets. And at the end of February, based on revenues received to date and what we're projecting to receive for the remainder of the year, and we're looking at $75,127,022, that's the estimate for the end of the year. And then for the expenditures, I'm making the assumption that we have 435,000 and change remaining in the budget. So the expenditures are noted at 73 let's say $7 million. If you look at the attached revenue sheet that shows revenues to date and projects out for the rest of the year, I'm showing that we're not needing to use the fund balance that we applied to this year's budget, so I'm adding that back in. And then I also note a special appropriation using excess education cost sharing revenues minus the Board of Education tuition shortfall. So I'm subtracting $300,000 out. So then we would have approximately a $1.2 million unassigned fund balance increase at the end of this fiscal year. Of course, this is just an estimate, a point in time. And I will go over the $300,000 item when I discuss the status of the health insurance fund at a later point. So I'm done with that. I will comment that with regards to expenditures, I have 3 areas of concern. One is the legal expenditures, because I've noted lately, I mean, we're okay, but I've noticed they're starting to ramp up a bit, more happening like right at the beginning of March. Yes.
Is there anything in our packet referencing the legal fees, or are you
Oh.
just talking off the cuff?
I have 3 points that I wanted to talk about, one of them
Okay,
being
that are
the-
not in our packet.
Right, so,
Oh,
well, you would
okay.
have it in your packets in your,
The monthly sum.
in your monthly summary, which
Right.
they're found in Department 114, which is subsection 140. And we're really kind of trending okay. However, my concern has been elevated. Recently, we are going to need to have some transcripts of some zoning board of appeals meetings done, and so, those are a little bit more than we would have expected. And so that's, let's see, if you look on page 8, that's where the legal services are. At the end of February, we're at 50%, but as I said, when we turned the month into March, it's kind of ramped up a bit. The other area, which I've mentioned before, is Department 215, which is dispatch. They are really, we've been doing transfers, but they're going to need additional funding in that department.
I just have one question on the transcripts.
Sure.
That's required by law for us to do that for those particular zoning meetings?
Well, because they're court cases, that's why.
Okay.
It's only because they're court cases that we
Okay.
need to do the transcripts, yes.
Okay,
And that's
and-
kind of pricey.
And so you go to an outside vendor to have that work done?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are they just taped then, the meetings, and they listen to it and do it, or how? Is that how they're doing it? Okay.
Okay, so that's with that. And then the,
Sorry, where was the dispatch one? Did you-
it's Department 215, it's on page 15 at the bottom.
Just give me a sec.
So if you look at the part-time dispatch account and the overtime, because of the transfers we've been doing out of the part-time dispatcher account into the overtime account, because we don't have it, part-timers aren't working the open shifts we have. The chief has talked about this before, so we're needing to pay more overtime to the full-time dispatchers. We've had a couple of our dispatchers out on medical leave this year, and that just compounds the problem. So we've been living so far to date with the transfers, but I would expect next month that we'll be coming before the boards to do a transfer for this department to make it through the end of the year. And I had one more, the fire marshal. So that is Department 224, and that is on page 19. So with regards to the fire marshal, it's, as you know, we have a new fire marshal on board, and it's kind of like an evolving change with the department, but long story short, he's gonna need to use the resources of deputy fire marshals for when he's not there, because fire marshal services, you need to be available 24/7. So, having to call in some part-timers may require us to, need some additional funding there. So those are really the three areas that, I'm kind of continuously looking at and monitoring. I will note that I'm happy to say that it looks like each of our fire departments will be able to make it through the rest of this year without requiring any additional funding from the board. So that's a good thing. Because I've kind of been keeping them on watch, and I've talked to, both of the fire chiefs, and it looks like we'll make it through the end of the year. Of course, we'll be doing some transfers, but we're going to be able to make it through the end of the year. So those are the comments that I wanted to make on the budgets. So I don't know if anyone has any questions.
I'll wait till we get to the transfer part of the agenda.
Anna, if you could just do the explanation on the fire marshal again, because I'm still a little confused on that.
Okay, so,
So we didn't actually get there yet,
Oh,
Rich?
okay.
We're still on Anna's report. She'll talk about the fire marshal vehicle after she.
Oh,
think-
no,
no,
not
I
that, but
think
just
I meant-
the
I can-
point where you mentioned a need by the fire marshal and deputy fire marshal, and
well,
I gotta.
we've had a turnover with the fire marshal.
Right.
The previous fire marshal left, and we have a
Right.
new fire marshal. And so, you need to have, like, if there's a fire in the middle of the night on the weekend, a fire marshal needs to come in on scene. So if the fire marshal, for whatever reason, isn't available, away on vacation or something like that, he needs to have deputies available to come in for those shifts. So
Right.
that ramps up, like, we have to pay for those services. And so he's kind of in the process of analyzing what he estimates his needs to be for the rest of the year, and depending on how that comes out when he does a quantitative analysis, then we'll determine whether or not we need to come for some additional
Oh,
funding.
okay.
But it's kind of something that we've been looking at, we've been reviewing, and so I just wanted to put the board on notice, because typically you kind of like to know that if we're going to expect to come back for any additional funding.
And I'll add, we did have, with that transition, there's added costs because we didn't have someone on salary, we were bringing in a lot of people to cover. And, we'll talk at some point during budget process about all the building permits we're getting. And all that money is going into the building department, and it's way over budget. We may have talked about that last meeting. But there's so many other departments that are affected by building permits, and let's talk about Costco. They open up in November. So during this fiscal year that we're in, there was a lot of need for the building, for the fire marshal's office to be there almost at least every other day checking and all that. That added hours into the workload.
Right.
So while we see a revenue boost in one department, other departments feel that pinch as well.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask about the expenditure reports or the revenue report?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Just grab this here. Thank you.
Just a question or two about the revenue account status report. So, could you update us, Anna, on tuition and the Salem debt, those two items? I would think that because we're 2/3 the way through the year, that the school system, Mariana, over at Board of Ed, would be able to give us an update that's accurate on the tuition. I know this number seems to fluctuate. We're not sure. Some some folks have moved into East Lyme.
Well,
Some
with
have
re-
chosen not to go to the high school.
Right, so with
So-
regards to the out-of-district tuition, so, in prior months, we were looking at a larger deficit, and so it's a little bit less now. And so the Board of Education distributed their proposed budget to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So within that budget, there are, they have itemized what their projection for the tuition revenue to the end of the year is. And so I use that number.
Okay.
And so I feel it's, like a better number. However, it could change. Hopefully, if it changes, it's for the better. It doesn't decrease. But that's kind of the reason for the fluctuation. Like in previous months, before I did do the projection for the rest of the year, I would always call Mariana and discuss it with her. One of the things that she had indicated to me is she used the total number of students that were eligible to come to East Lyme this year, whereas some of them ended up going to
Elsewhere,
other
yeah.
districts. And so when she did the projection for next year's budget, she took that into consideration.
Okay.
So we shouldn't have such a large variance in next year's budget.
Okay. For this year, that the number of $3,050,000, which is the anticipated amount, and I'm on page 2 of the revenue report. So I've seen different numbers in this packet of documentation with respect to the reduction in that anticipated to the end of the year. So sometimes I've seen 250,000. I think in that, I think in the first document, in your unassigned fund balance report, there was a little bit different number. So just what is your best estimate as to that reduction then, or what is in that Board of Education
Going with the
which we haven't seen yet?
The projection is the $250,000 shortfall.
Okay, so 250,000 would be it. So that would even affect the fund balance then, because I think you used a slightly higher number, if I'm not mistaken. If I can pull that out again. Find where that is. Yeah, I think so you did use the 250 there. Okay, I must have seen it in something else where
But
you
in the
used-
in the prior months, I will agree that I was projecting a larger
Okay.
deficit. However, when I received the black and white document,
Yes, okay, so-
I'm using that number at this point. And then the other piece as well is sometimes when we first start the school year, we'll get like 2 payments in 1 month, so it's kind of a little difficult to project. And so when I start early on, if I can tell when it's
Okay.
2 payments, because it's over 500,000. So if
Right.
if that's only 2 payments and that's all I've received year to date, then I just multiply that by 8, because we have 8 more payments, because the numbers are somewhat consistent. They fluctuate somewhat, but not not that
Dramatically.
dramatic.
Yeah, they shouldn't,
So
right.
it's challenging until you
Okay.
get a little bit
pattern.
more
Yeah,
history into the year to come up with a
Right.
better estimate.
That would make sense. Likewise, my other question just had to do with, on the flip side of the revenue sheet, the educational cost sharing. So again, I know we've used, the 5.7 plus million number, and that number was actually more. But in the fund balance report that you just gave, you talked about the windfall, and I thought it was more like 492,794.
Well, that's the difference between what the state is saying they're going to give us for
Right.
ECS.
And what we're actually giving.
What we projected, because we used the
Yeah.
governor's number when we used the projections in this year's budget.
Right.
But it's plus an additional 66,000 and change that we're getting additional education cost sharing
Okay.
dollars. Because remember, we talked about it at last month's meeting, that when the state did the audit of the prior year, they found that they had underpaid us. So they make it up.
So that's your higher number, okay.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. And so we're just gonna continue to use this, the 5.7 million number in this revenue sheet. I mean,
Well,
just,
because-
otherwise
The problem is
To be
it's
consistent,
It's
yeah.
what the adopted number is.
Right, okay, well, that's fine, thanks for that. And let me just see if I had anything else on, no, I think that's okay. Everything else has to do with the health insurance, my other questions.
Okay.
Thanks, Anna.
And then I don't know, it's maybe because it's new to my eyes to look at these numbers of sheets of numbers. I was just wondering, a lot of this remains pretty constant through the year, and you just see a drip, drip, drip of the use of the funds within the budget for each of the different account numbers. But as we've noted, sometimes some of those accounts get drained a little bit faster and kind of raise some red flags, and they get a little bit lost in the massive number of numbers that are in these sheets. Like, for example, the dispatch overtime. You know, you have to look through and find it. I'm wondering if there's a way to either have an additional column or maybe pull up a little report at the beginning of this that would show if there's an account that has a large variance from month to month, kind of a top 5 or top 10 that may be outside of a normal range, that it would be something that'd be easier to be brought to your attention. Just some ideas. I don't know how feasible any of this might be.
So, and that's kind of why I talk about areas of concern. Some of the budgets that are expended at a higher rate, there's reasons for them. Like, for example, we have various service contracts, and so if that's all that's budgeted in an account is to pay one service contract, and that service contract is due at the beginning of the year, well, that's totally expended all at once.
Right.
Another area are liability and workers' comp insurance premiums. We pay them quarterly, and so we've just been billed for the final quarter, so we're going to be paying that, and then those accounts are going to show that they're all expended. So there's various reasons for that. They're not all real red flags, if you will.
Right, right.
And so that's kind of, when I go through the budget at the end of the month, I just kind of scan for that. I look at areas that, like, I notice as being, like concerns, and I'll just, reach out to the departments, and then ultimately, like, those are the 3 areas that I brought up to your attention tonight.
Right, I appreciate that. I'm wondering, for those accounts where they are paid on a quarterly, or if they're paid all up front, or however, if maybe those could be parsed into a separate section, that they aren't kind of a monthly, because then it seems kind of silly to get a monthly report on things when it doesn't reflect the activity on those accounts.
Maybe the new system will be able to do that
Yeah,
easier.
so
Yeah.
this is a system report, and I
Oh,
don't have the
okay.
ability to make the types of.
I understand, I
To
understand.
customize the way that you're asking.
Right,
And they flow in
Yeah.
order.
right. I understand that.
But we have a new system we're planning, and maybe, and it's supposed to be, a little bit more customizable.
Oh, okay.
We'll be able to really pick the numbers and do different things with it. I think that's coming.
Oh, okay. And as I get more experience, I'll understand which accounts are those quarterly ones, so, or annuals. So, thank you.
Are we all set on the revenue and expense reports?
I did have one question. So I see we're doing really well on the investment earnings.
Yes.
We're over budget on the investment earnings, but it looks like almost $40,000, which is great. Do you know offhand how much is in our investment accounts with principal balances?
So, with regards to what, CD investments, is that what you're asking?
Well, whatever these investment vehicles are, interest CGB 1372, investment by CDARS, whatever that is. This is the interest that we're getting on those instruments?
Correct.
So I'm just curious as to what the principal balance is or what the principal balances are for those accounts.
So they vary from time to time, so, because we're receiving the interest monthly, like, our balances would be higher during peak collection times, which would be July, August, and then January, February. But then for the rest of the, between collection periods, we're spending down our balances. So, and then what we also look at is doing various CDs. So the terms that we use are 3, 6, 9, and 12 months, and it all depends. So like with our January collection period, we're not really doing any 12-month CDs because we need to be mindful of how much cash we have on hand at the end of the year. So we kind of have a threshold. We don't want to have any more than, let's say, $2.5 million maturing after June 30th, because we have to really take a hard look at cash flow. So in answer to your question, it's a constant, varying dollar amount.
And it could have wild swings based on the receipt of income from the property tax twice a year.
Correct.
So overall, what would you say the rate of return is that we're getting for these investments? 2%, 1%?
Well, earlier in the year, we were getting over 2%, and now the rates they're lower. I mean,
Yeah.
for like on the low end, say for a 3-month CD, we would get 0.45%. For a 12-month CD, we could get 1%.
Right.
So it just
So
depends.
what would you say is the lower threshold of the amount in our investment savings vehicles? Let's say it's like 20 million to 40 million, and 20, we never really go below that?
Okay, so I would say, in July, I would say we're over, July, August, when we get the collections, we're over 20 million, say between 21 and 23 million. On the low end, I would say between 5 and 6 million.
Okay.
And that's in June.
And that is not the undesignated fund balance?
It's everything pulled together.
It's everything pulled together?
It's pulled together, yes.
Okay. All right.
I have one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
On the back end of revenue status, down near the bottom, it says insurance reimbursements. We got over 22,000 back. What was that for?
So actually, we projected 40,000 and we received the 62, so we received close to 23,000 more than we originally projected. So we have our liability and workers' comp policies with CIRMA, which is a Connecticut Interlocal Risk Management Association, and so for the last say 3 to 5 years, if you're in the pool at the end of the year, their executive board votes and they return funds to you, and it's dependent upon what the percent is that they vote to give their members and what the dollar value of your premiums
It's a
paid
dividend
were.
off a mutual company, so. They've had some bad years, there's those catastrophic years where the big hurricanes and all that, but lately it's, again, been pretty good, and our particular risks and loss ratios have been stellar, so we get a bigger percentage back.
So you estimate from previous years,
And they will not, I inquire as to, for budgeting purposes, what I can put in, they will not really give you anything, so that's really what I have to do.
Yeah.
Because in the event that maybe next year, for whatever reason, the executive board will say we're not gonna give a dividend, so they wouldn't wanna, solidify it in stone, but we have been receiving them, and they have been actually increasing every year.
okay, thanks.
So I just have a comment that I would like to share with the rest of the board members. If you look at Anna's report, the general fund budget summary report, where she kind of highlights the big differences. If you,
Okay.
so
Thanks.
if you go to the fourth line down under description tax/year-to-date, you'll see how many tax receipts we received as of the end of February, and the collection rate is 98.17. If you look at what we did last year, at this point in time, it was 98.68. So that doesn't seem like a big difference. However, when you calculate the amount of dollars that that represents, it's quite substantial. It's over $300,000. So as we enter into budget season, I'd just like you to be cognizant of that, because I don't know if we're going to have more difficulty in the next year or two collecting revenues based on what's happening in the economy. That's a good chunk of change. And especially for the new people, at a certain point, Mr. McCullough comes before us and he asks us to, what do you call it, Anna, when he asks us to table the tax collections on a certain amount of money?
What he's asking for you to do is approve the suspense list.
Yeah,
And so.
that's it. Which means that it won't try to be collected after a certain point. So we have to be very careful about that. What I'm trying to get at is that may seem not like a big deal until you translate that into actual dollars that we won't be collecting.
So wait, I'm confused. Are they saying that if you don't pay your taxes after a certain amount of time, they just write them off?
No.
No, they don't, they never, so the suspense list is suspending the tax. It's never written off. I guess there are different reasons. Maybe people move away,
Well, and
or
one of the things,
foreclosures,
even
or-
though you're put on that suspense list, we can still collect the money. It's just a process that the tax collectors go through, like it's beyond a certain number of years, because you kind of have to do some purging to the system, but it's a process that all tax collectors go through per the statute.
If it's real estate collections that are owed, then there are other steps that you can take to get that money.
We wouldn't put real estate on that list. It's just really personal property and
Oh,
motor
personal
vehicles,
property,
yeah.
okay.
Because real estate, we place liens on.
That's what I was
real
gonna
estate.
say, yeah,
That
okay.
happens every year, yeah.
So the suspense list it never includes
It's
if for
primarily,
foreclosures or anything like that?
it's there may be foreclosures that are listed on that,
Right,
But-
it's small,
but.
but most of it would be for vehicles
Correct.
that, where the taxes aren't paid because they move out of town and
Mhm.
they just leave town and don't come back. But if they ever tried to re-register, then they would have to
They get
bring it up
kicked
to
then.
date
They
in
get
order
kicked
to
then,
re-register.
A lot of business property as well, so machine shop has machines, but that machine shop went out of business,
Mhm.
yet we taxed them.
Mhm.
Then it was formally shut down. I see a lot of that. I'm looking at the list going, that business hasn't been in town
Right,
or been in operation for 10 years. Thus it shows up, you know. You're never gonna get that money. That business went out of town or
right.
Bankrupt.
Which is why I want an increased
Yeah.
focus on collections on the
Right.
front end before it gets to that point where these people are going out of business. So that, fraction of 1%, I think we need to pay some attention to as the economy may worsen over the next year or two. That's all. Okay. Were there any other questions for Anna on revenues or on the expenditure side of the reports?
Yeah, I have one question on the revenue account status. Say, underneath, like, say miscellaneous tax collector, it says 625 anticipated, you with me? And then there's like year-to-date revenue and it's parentheses. Why is it in parentheses? Like, what does that mean exactly?
Can you say what account you're talking about again?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the sheet, Town of East Lyme revenue account status,
Mhm.
219. So if you go down to say like miscellaneous tax collector, it's like the fifth one from the bottom. It says then anticipated is 625, and then there's year-to-date revenue is 243, in parentheses. What do the parentheses mean?
So in
How
other
does
words,
that work?
actually, that's a negative amount, and the reason that that's a negative amount, so the projection is based on receipts that the tax collector receives when people come in the office and they want copies of different documents, and
Mhm.
so we charge them.
Yeah.
So sometimes at the end of, during collections, if there's like a miscellaneous write-off, we write it off to that account. So that's why there's a negative amount there.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are we
Okay.
ready to move on to the health insurance fund?
Okay.
Okay, so, last month, in your green folders, I included, information on the status of the health insurance fund, and I did include another copy, in your packets for this evening. So, I started off, explaining that both the town and the Board of Ed were in a pooled group relative to health insurance, because that's really what makes the most sense for the town relative to, efficiency and economies. The Board of Education, they make up 73% of the group. The town is 27%. Included in that 27% are our town employees, water and sewer operation employees, and library employees. Water and sewer operations in the library, they do pay their share of the premium. So, we're just paying for the town employees. So for many years, we were set up on a self-insured plan. And so with regards to that, there were two components, one being administrative fees and the other being claims. So every year, the insurance carrier that we were with would do an actuarial review of our claims history on a rolling 12-month period, and that's how they would come up with how what we called allocation rates. And those allocation rates would assist us in how much the town had to contribute for our shares of the premiums and how much we would charge the employees for the various premium shares that they have relative to their collective bargaining agreements. And then the other piece is the administrative fees, which included like an administrative fee that we would pay to the carrier from administering our claims. Also, there was a consulting fee in there, as well as a fee for stop-loss insurance. So what the stop-loss insurance did for us is we had what we call an individual stop-loss component at $125,000. So any claim that any individual claim that exceeded $125,000, all the town was responsible for was $125,000 of that claim. So, as you know, because we've been, I think, for the last 3 fiscal years, living the catastrophic dilemma of, for those of you on the board, I'm sorry, the catastrophic dilemma, the cash flow dilemmas that we had been having with our self-insurance plan relative to the rising claims that we were experiencing. So last fiscal year, I believe it was a 28.19% premium increase we took to try to deal with the ongoing dilemma that we were having for cash flow purposes. This July 1st, we transitioned from that self-insured plan to the state of Connecticut 2.0 plan, which the state is operating as a self-insured plan. However, as a participant, it's a fully insured plan for us. So what I'd like to talk about is I included a historical analysis of the fund for you. It talks about, it goes back to 6 6/30/13, and it goes through 6/30/19. It shows the revenues for the plan, the expenditures for the plan, what our operating results were, what our fund balance were each year, what the IBNR claims were. So every year, we have what is referred to as IBNR claims, incurred but not reported. So I go to the doctor on June 30th, but the insurance company doesn't get the bill for that service I had until sometime in July, and maybe doesn't pay it till August. So that IBNR is like a 60, 90-day run-out period. So you'll see for each of the fiscal years what that IBNR was for the plan. So if you go back to 2013 and 14, we were under $500,000. And then in the following years, those numbers increased. I mean, we were really hit hard in 2015 for the first time, where our IBNR was over $1 million. And then we really saw no relief over the last several years. Then if you go down to the last set of information, it also shows what the large claims were. So back in 2013, we had 10 large claims. And you can see each year those numbers were increasing. Last fiscal year, we had 28 large claims. So how you define a large claim is once a claim hits, an individual claim hits $62,500, which is 50% of the IBNR amount, it gets put on that report. And then it also shows the number of claims that exceeded that individual stop loss amount, and then the report indicates how much money was greater than $125,000, meaning the town didn't have to pay that; it was covered by the secondary insurance, and then the bottom portion is the town share. So last fiscal year we had 28 large claims. The total payment on those was $4.2 million. 13 of those claims exceeded the $125,000 stop loss limit. So that secondary insurance paid $1.4 million of those claims. The town share was $2.8 million. Also included in your packet is a report, the health insurance IBNR tracking. So what this is these are the claims. So on July 1st, we went to the state 2.0 plan. However, we still had claims that we were going to be responsible for paying for that were with our previous plan. So in the month of July, we paid out $625,000 for those claims. And which makes sense because these are services that we are received on or before June 30th. And so most of them were getting paid in the month of July. And then it trickled down in August and September. Now,
Where are you, Anna?
it's on this
The
sheet.
last sheet.
You turn that over.
Oh,
There you
there
go.
we go.
Yeah,
Okay, thank
I
you.
know too.
So Aetna projected our IBNR for this year to be $882,000. Before Aetna had given us their numbers, I projected it to be $891,000, based on and now. So I think that's, the estimates were pretty close. But at this point, as I said, we've only paid, well, I shouldn't say only, we've paid out $718,000 to date. Aetna will leave our account open for 2 years after we leave them. So they will leave our account open until 6/30/2021. That's their process. They have a 2-year run-out period. I will note that since, starting in, the months of October, November, December, they're really trying to flush out all the outstanding claims that they have in their hopper, and some of them show charges and some of them are credits. So that's why they've kind of been equalizing out. At the end of the 2-year period, if there's a credit on the books, they will send us that money. It's complicated, I know. Okay, so in your packets, I included a couple of other documents. What I'd like to talk about first is the state of Connecticut at the end of every quarter, it's in your green folder, and it's labeled Connecticut State Partnership 2.0, East Lyme Town and Board of Education. It looks like this. Okay, so the front side deals with health insurance. So, so for the first 6 months, we've paid the state close to $4.6 million in premiums. We've had let's say 2.4 million medical claims, 450,000 pharmacy claims, for a total payout of $2.8 million. So right under that, last fiscal year, at 12/31/18, we paid out $4.7 million in claims. We have had a 24.9% decrease in claims year over year. So
Is that just comparing the two? You're
the two
talking
fiscal
about-
years, right. So last fiscal year, as of December 31st, we had paid out $4.7 million in claims. On the state plan, the payout has been $2.8 million. I subtracted from that $4.7 million the IBNR we've paid to date, the $718,000, which was on the report I just showed you. And then I subtract from that the claims on the state plan that have been paid out, $2.8 million. So we've had let's say $1.2 million decrease in claims year over year, December to December, or 24.9% decrease. Below that, you will see in December of 2018, we had 15 large claims at that time, totaling a little over $2 million. December of 19, we have 3 large claims on the books, for a total of $233,000. A decrease in large claims of close to $1.8 million, 12 in number, so the dollar decrease is 88%, the number decrease is 80%. If you look over, they list the 3 large claims. One of the claims that's listed is at $50,000, so that wouldn't have even been on our radar last year. For all intents and purposes, if you want to compare year to year, we really have 2 large claims, So it would have been nice if this would have been the year we had last year, but this is the year. I looked at the large claim list from last year, and 50% of those of the contracts are no longer on our plan. So, that's people that have gotten off the plans. I mean, I know that you've heard, we've talked about, we've had an uptick in retirements on the town side. So the individuals that are retiring are coming off of our plan. So all these things together are what makes the difference. So if you look at the first spreadsheet, we've had, we've had five bad years of experience when we were on the self-insured plan, and it looks like this is the year that we're going to see a positive change in our plan experience. So.
Assuming we don't get the coronavirus here.
I was thinking
Well,
the
we're
exact same
still
thing.
only halfway through the fiscal year,
No,
so
I'm just-
anything can change. But
Yeah.
we've started the year off on a
excellent.
very
That
good
was a
note.
great report. That was
Yeah.
a great report.
So there's one other document that is included in your green folder, and it's Aetna Pharmacy Network Discount and Dispensing Fee. So at the very bottom, you'll see total amount due, $35,426.01. We're going to get that from Aetna. They're going to actually send that money back to us. What this is, this is part of the plan, is they guarantee us a certain percent of savings of that we're going to get below the manufacturer's suggested retail price of the drugs. So the top section identifies what those discounts are. So for retail brand, we're supposed to save 16.5%, and so all the different categories are listed in the percent savings. The middle section is kind of defining what our actual claims were, and then at the very bottom, it talks about what the actual savings, amounts were, where the variances were. So on the retail brand, we were supposed to save 16.5%. We saved 20.71%, so we were a little over. On the retail generic, we were supposed to save 77%. We saved 72%. So at the end, you see where it shows discounts, it shows all the pluses and minuses. So on the retail brand, we had we had positive savings of 43,000. But on the retail generic, we actually didn't save over $51,000 that we were supposed to receive based on this discount program. So at the end of the day, we're going to receive $35,000 back from Aetna. So this is something a little bit of a positive because that helps boost the overall deficit that we need to deal with in the fund. Okay, so I've kind of gone over all the, the type of plan it was, where and what we have now, and kind of like where we are. One of the other issues that we have to deal with we have to discuss is how are we going to deal with that deficit.
Before we talk about how we deal with it, I feel a little lost with all this number. The insurance is not my wheelhouse at all, but if I'm reading your report correctly, the unaudited operating results of $441,316,
Mm-hmm.
that's how much we have in an account to pay out claims from when we were self-insured? Is that what that number is saying?
Right, that's the that's where it was like more at 6/30/19. So, yeah.
So we
okay.
might have a little bit more money in there, but that's money that is targeted towards the payment of these IBNR claims, the ones that we have not received bills from yet, from when we were self-insured.
Correct.
So when I look at your write-up, your
Mhm.
analysis,
Mhm.
and you're saying that you estimate we will have between a $725,000 and $800,000 shortfall in the fund,
Mm-hmm.
does that mean that you're anticipating $1.2 million worth of payouts in the future? Because if we have a surplus of 441 and you're projecting a shortfall of 800, then that means we're going to have 1.2 million more claims?
Well, so what you really have to look at is on that same report, the fund balance line.
On the fund balance line?
Yeah, so like where you're taking, okay, so operating results, and then below that is reported the fund balance. So if you look at the fund balance is a negative $1.1 million. So that $700,000 to $800,000 estimate is based on the fact that we have a negative fund balance in the fund. So that's how that all calculates out.
Thank you.
So okay, so this is a carry forward.
Right, because it's you have to think of it in terms of it's the cumulative effect of your operations over time.
All right, so operating results from 2018, we had a deficit of 954. And we added that to the fund balance from the prior year to get 1.6. Is that how this spreadsheet is working?
Right.
Okay.
Because if you remember correctly, the prior year, we entered into an agreement with Aetna to suppress our claims so that we could wait until the new fiscal year when we had another cash infusion from our premium dollars. We took the large premium increase, the 28.19%, so with the hopes that we would build our cash reserve up again. However, it didn't happen. Our claims continued to rise. And if you look at that report from the state 2.0 plan, we've paid into them let's say close to $5.6 million in premiums, which is consistent with what we paid out in claims through December of last year, the $4.7 million. So when you think of it, this is the year that our claims are declining. So, it just, it's unfortunate that it didn't happen last year, because if what's happening this year had happened last year, we would have really been in a good positive place. It would have put us in a good positive place.
We
However-
wouldn't have had to come up with $800,000
Correct,
to
yes.
figure out how to pay.
We would actually be in a positive cash flow situation, which is what we were hoping to get with that large increase last year.
Okay.
So I just have a quick question.
Mhm.
When you're saying they have claims that are still out that are over a year old, I thought the claims had to be submitted within like 60 or 90 days or something. Like, can you
So-
explain that to me?
So sometimes, like at the end of the month, when they send a report that shows all the claims that were paid that month, it shows the month that they were originally put into the system, and you would be surprised sometimes the lag in months before they would get paid. So sometimes if a claim is submitted and it goes through their internal review process, sometimes they deny the claim. So that's what makes those claims take a longer period of time to actually get paid and run themselves through the program.
And if they're denied, then is East Lyme
They have an
responsible
appeal.
for
Well, they
paying
have
for them?
No,
They just go through the appeal process?
they go through the appeal process.
Okay. So they have to be submitted within a timely fashion, but the company doesn't necessarily
Your
process
carrier.
it?
Correct, yeah,
in-
for
okay.
various reasons.
Yeah,
For
no,
various
I'm following you now.
So that's, I think, the story of where we were, how we ended up getting there, what the drivers were, so.
Yeah, very good. So, does the board wish to take the 5 to 10 minute break now and then come back and listen to the possible solutions? Or do you want to press forward and finish with the health insurance?
I'll take a 5-minute break.
Okay, so we will take a 5 to 10 minute break and then come back and listen to the possible solutions to the problem. Okay, thank you. Okay, the Board of Finance regular meeting resumes at 7:45.
8:45.
8:45?
8:45.
We sprung ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, I get all excited there.
You guys gonna think, oh, we have another hour.
That's why I said I needed a break.
I was all excited.
Keep going.
All right. Okay.
So the suggestion, one of the suggestions, and as I mentioned before, when we were talking about the estimated unassigned fund balance, is to go through the special appropriations process to appropriate the additional revenue that we're entitled to receive from the state because we budgeted a lower amount. And the difference between that and what the projected shortfall in the tuition revenues is, which at this point in time is estimated to be $300,000. That would be a way to make up for some of it. Budget for this in the 2020-21 fiscal year budgets. I will say that the town did not budget anything, nor did the Board of Education. I will mention that in this year's budget in 1920, the town did make a contribution already of $200,000. We budgeted to pay our estimated share of the IBNR. At the end of this fiscal year, if we have any remaining contingency funds, we may want to consider transferring them to the health insurance fund. I have had discussions with the Board of Education Finance Director, and she indicated that if the Board of Education has any remaining funds in this year's budget, that they will transfer them to the health insurance fund. At the end of last fiscal year, I will say that the Board of Ed did transfer $217,000 that they had remaining in their budget. So last fiscal year, if you remember, they expended down their entire budget. At the end of the year, there would have been that 217 remaining. However, they identified that to transfer over to be part of the solution. So everyone has been trying to, has contributed some portion to the overriding shortfalls that we've been experiencing. And then, of course, the other thing that we could do is just, at the end of the 2 years, make an appropriation from our unassigned fund balance. However, that's not, it seems we've been struggling for so many years to try to increase our unassigned fund balance. Finally, last fiscal year, we had a notable, increase that went into the unassigned fund balance that, it just don't really want to do that. However, at the end of the day, we may not have a choice in that. As I said, we do have until 6/30/21 when the fund closes out. So, we do have some additional time to see how things turn out for us.
So this obligation of $800,000, a lot of it has been paid already, but it's
No.
But
Is
is it an accounting entry or is it a?
No, it's
real.
It's real, yes. So the issue is this deficit would be greater if we hadn't made any additional contributions to try and remedy this. However, as you can see, we've just had bad years,
Right.
and the funding that we were putting into the plan was not sufficient to keep up with the bad years that we had.
Right.
And one of the largest drivers was those large claims that we experienced. I mean,
So this,
20%, I mean, that was like 80, and like, if you want to look at it, like 80% of our claims was like 20% of the group. It just, I mean, typically that's the way it is. We just had 5 really
Right.
bad catastrophic years.
so who do we owe this money to?
So
Aetna?
it's owed to the fund.
To what fund? when you say
It's
the
owed
fund?
to the health insurance fund.
Okay.
So,
For the state, that's maintained by the state?
No, by the town. So the town,
So we did pay the bills. We
We-
did pay the bills.
we have paid the
This is
bills,
an
yes.
accounting entry.
Yes.
This gets back to what I was asking.
right,
We did pay all the bills.
we have
And now
paid-
we just have to look to make this fund whole.
we have to make the fund balance out to zero when we
Right,
close
so
it.
why do we need to do that by 6/30/2021? If it's just on our books, we've already paid the money.
Right,
We don't have any obligation to
correct.
anybody.
We
for the-
could take longer if we choose.
We could take longer. We could
Correct.
take 5 years if we wanted
If we
to.
chose to, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I just,
That's one of your options, Anna,
Right,
into
yes, we
funds
could, we could,
Oh,
like,
sorry, I didn't mean to jump
try to
ahead.
figure it out
Sorry.
over, I just didn't say it right.
okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, this year, because of the, I think, as I said, because our budget estimate for the ECS was lower than what the state grant ultimately ended up being after the state budget was adopted, that's why I'm recommending, you know, that special appropriation in this year's budget, because of that. That's not a typical surplus projection that we would have. Because typically, you know, if everything goes well, if the state adopts, things are going well with the state and they're adopting the budget in a timely manner, we would be able to have that good number for our budget. However, last year when we were doing the budget, we were concerned because in the previous 2 years, we had issues with the state and their projected revenues. I mean, we had one year where they said, oh, we're going to give you $6.2 million, and midway through the year, they said, oh, no, we're only going to give you $600,000. So that was bad in that the state reneged on its promises to us. And then the following, so, you know, we wanted
Right.
to take caution because
Right.
we did not want to be in a deficit position with any of our projected revenues.
So the Board of Education, when they found out that the healthcare premium for the state plan was cut in half, basically, over what they originally projected, reduced their budget accordingly before it went to the Board of Selectmen. So there is no leftover budget money in the Board of Ed to help fund this from those healthcare premium savings. What did the general government side do? Do you still have the original increase of the projected, what was it, 14, 15%?
9%.
Or did you adjust it
Oh,
downward?
we adjusted ours down. The Board of Selectmen did that.
You did
yes.
that as well?
Yes.
So there's, so then I did hear you correctly, there's no money budgeted for this
Oh, correct. Yes.
in this book?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right. Okay.
I mean, this is not, at this point in time, this was just to provide you with information on the fund, the history, how we ended up in this position, and some suggestions on how to remedy the deficit fund position.
Anna, when I asked earlier, thanks. When I asked earlier about the tuition amount, and you had, I think you had said 250,000.
yep.
And so this is where I read it. I said, I
Right,
think I read
yep.
two different
Yeah,
numbers. This is where I read it.
And that
Okay.
was, and you know what, when I was working on putting this together, that was before I focused on the additional
Yeah.
66,000. So that's
Yeah,
where the
that's-
difference is.
that's fine.
Is that 66,000.
Yeah, and then the windfall is actually 492. It's closer to 500,000. Right?
Correct,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
I'm
Okay.
sure where it is now.
Okay. And in the
Oh,
new
so that's a
budget,
typo.
yeah, just reversing the numbers. When the new budget document is presented to us from the Board of Education, that will show that 4%, not 9%, for their, in terms of their budgeting for health insurance.
Correct. They made, the
Correct.
Board of Education
Okay.
made their own reduction on their side before they finalized the budget, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the state information comes out like after the first of the year, and actually, from what I understand, this year, they gave us, they presented more detailed information than they have in the past, so, so it's, we can expect that, percent increase to be a reliable number, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
So.
I did take a peek at the budget that you handed us this evening, and in the revenue section, I see that you did not pull anything from the undesignated fund balance for this year, correct?
That's correct, yes. Okay, so when we had, had discussions about, trying to increase the unassigned fund balance, over time. So the first thoughts were to reduce what we applied in the budget. So like for 6/30/19, for this year, we estimated 175,000. I believe in last year's budget, it was $500,000. So that was reducing the 675 to $500,000. Then what we had talked about is actually budgeting in the budget. You know, having a line item that says, you know, for unassigned fund balance, sort of budget for it to increase it. However, you know, we did not do that this year, because we actually had very good operating results for last year, which
Very good.
we have not seen operating results as good as that in several years. And a lot of it has to do with, we had some really good surplus revenues, meaning our revenues
Like the
exceeded what
building
we projected.
permits and-
The
yeah,
building
very
permits,
good.
one of them, and even last year, the school tuitions, the projection was greater than, what we ended up was greater than what they originally projected. So those were two large areas.
So if we're on track to return 1.250 back to the unassigned fund balance, we could choose to pay off the healthcare fund and not send that entire balance back to the unassigned fund balance.
That's correct.
Then we wouldn't be at 10%, which I really do like that number. Or another example is we could pull $100,000 from the unassigned fund balance in the budget, 100,000 for the next 8 years, pay it off that way, and just commit to maintaining a 10% balance in the unassigned fund balance for the next couple of years, and not worry too much about getting it up to 12, 13. You know, that's a big jump this year, and I'm happy with that number, and I think that would affect our credit rating in a positive way.
Well, I will say that we will get some positive positive feedback on that when we go to the rating agency. However, it's just 1 year, and they like to see trends, meaning, you know,
Right.
a multi year kind of thing. And and then the other thing is, they really wouldn't look to upgrade us like right away. So they're going to have to see some consistency over
Right.
time there.
Right.
So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, if you will.
Stability.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very happy if we could just maintain that for 2 or 3 years.
Definitely.
That's a great amount. I mean, I know the goal is 15 eventually, but jumping from 7 or 8 to 10 is great. And if we could maintain that, I'm happy with that in order to pay down some of our debt obligations.
The auditor had mentioned, depending upon the size of the budget.
Right, and
that
we're right in the middle.
Right in the sweet spot.
We are, so that's a good amount. Okay, so not to be figured out this evening.
Just for
Right.
information.
Yep. It's for the board to digest and ask any questions and come up with a solution
Is
during.
it possible to do a combination of things, rather than take it all out of one and, you know, maybe not 8 years, but 3 years or something, you know, that is
Yeah, I mean,
kind of
it's just,
compromise the hell out of it.
it was like, as you know, as I said,
put
this
that-
was just to present you with information and food for thought, because it's not gonna go away.
Yeah. But rather than all one way, I'm just trying to.
What, Mark?
Oh, it's only 8, I can, might as well. You know, it just, I protect my turf, right? And at the end of the day, it's all taxpayer money. It's all come from the same pocket. But that $800,000 debt, about 75% of it is Board of Ed. And just keep that in mind, and we'll be paying it with the efficiency of the town side's government. And, you know,
That's a very good point.
Just wanted to, if nothing else, it's in the record, I just wanted to, if nothing else, pat my department heads on the back and say, we're paying for the debt that was incurred elsewhere in town. But again, at the end of the day, we're all taxpayers, and we're protecting them, and we gotta pay this debt, and we just gotta move forward. That's what I wanted to put on record. I don't want to make that a longer conversation, because it is what it is.
No,
And
but
they're
that
not
is a
ever
good,
gonna
that is a
happen.
very good
Yeah.
point. And that's why I appreciate Anna pointing out too in her analysis, the 25-75 split or whatever it is,
Yeah.
as far as the
It's heavier on
obligation.
that side, 'cause they have a lot more
And
employees.
oh, by the way, the numbers that I used in there that said, like, this is how many contracts the town has, this is how many the board has, those numbers, believe it or not, they fluctuate monthly. 2 on, 1 off, 3 off, 1, I mean, it's,
Oh, I bet.
It's
I
it's
bet.
constant fluctuating on both sides. So, just so that you know.
Okay.
Just a thought, and we'll leave it at, I know we need to ponder and think of, multifaceted solution most likely, but I was happy at least to see number 3 here, that, if there's contingency, a remaining contingency and Board of Education budget funds, and looking, what they did last year, which was, I think, a good thing, because so many, such a high percentage of the group is Board of Education, so I was glad to see that. And I think, for me, no matter what, I think we need to work that in, however other ways we solve this and over what period of time, but I think that, we'll call it the responsibility for the different areas, because I know last year sewer and water paid a percentage akin to their, to their numbers, their employee numbers, as did library, and I know the library has done that previously, I believe. So, I think this is a good thing to keep in mind, personally, as we go forward. Thanks, Anna, for all this, lots of
It was a
info.
nice report.
Well,
Thank
maybe
you.
by the time we get done with our agenda, we'll find some more money to throw that way.
Okay, so I just a couple of other things. In your green folders, there's additional information for agenda item 6A relative to the fire marshal's vehicle parts. It was an update on the quote. Okay, we've already talked about the Aetna report, the state 2.0 report. So then there were the 2 audit letters, the one that is addressed to the Board of Finance, and then the second one is the management letter with their comments for us. And then I also put in your green folder the Board of Finance action item list. And from that list, I would, oh, did I make a copy for myself? I think the only, oh, I didn't make a copy for myself. Okay, that's fine. But I just wanted to point out that, next month, I will provide you, how we're gonna deal with the comments that the auditors made, and then, also talk about the policies and procedures, because those 2 items are noted, on the list. I did give you an updated copy. And then, one other thing is, coincidentally, in the last week, I have had conversations with our financial advisor. We're looking into the possibility that we may be able to do another refunding. If we're gonna be able to do a refunding, we're gonna do it we're not gonna wait and do it in August like we did last year. We're gonna try to do it now if it's feasible. Because when we do refundings, you need to save a certain percent. So if we're not gonna, we don't meet that threshold, then it's not worth it for us to do. But we are looking at it, so, because the rates are coming down. So we might be able to do a little bit more there. And then the last item is, talking about, going out to bid for the audit. We did have, one more year where we could go with RSM again. However, Mr. Bassett did give me a call today and, suggest to us that we may want to go out to bid this time because they've had some staffing changes, and so they're not going to have the resources to do the municipal audits in the upcoming year like they have been. A key member of the staff is going to be out on maternity leave during the period that they do the audit. So that's going to make it difficult for them. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention tonight. So
Their contract was over, this was the last year of the 3-year, or
there
you're
would-
saying there was one more to
we
go?
would do one more. So we did, it was 3 base years, but we, could go up to 5. So
Okay.
6/30/20 would be year 5 of that. So, I just wanted to bring that up to the board because if we want to go out to bid, I would really need to get RFPs out on the street next week.
Mhm.
So.
Well, Anna, I think that's something that we may have to do, given that conversation. It doesn't sound like the firm is able to complete its, be able to complete work or renew the contract for next
Right.
year.
Even if they were, they have been our auditor for quite some time. So that was the second time that the contract was renewed with RSM, even though they were under a different McGladrey or something, a
Well, they
different name.
changed their name.
They changed the name,
Yeah.
but really it was the same audit
same
firm.
folks.
So
Okay.
they've been around a long time. I was thinking it was a good opportunity to put it out to bid anyway, to get some fresh eyes in. And, I don't know if there's a state regulation that says you have to do it, but I know it's best practice to change it up after so many years. And I think it's time anyway. So that could be,
Yeah, they've been changing key personnel on this account, but it may be definitely time to change firms, as well. So,
So-
do it then, huh?
yeah. I think-
Yep, so let's
If they
roll
don't
forward
want
with
us.
that RFP that goes out. And when you get the bids back, I think they should be available for 30 days, right? Give
Give them 4 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll do a 4-week period
Yeah.
and then set up interviews.
Mhm.
So, the Board of Finance should have
well,
a
our
couple of members.
audit subcommittee
Okay, there you go.
will meet with Anna and the prospective.
And I think we should ask Mary Ann Stephen, the Board of Ed Finance Director as well, to sit on.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
sit
that's
on the-
very
on the
good,
committee for
very
that.
good.
So,
So, will that be an open bid, or will you just sort of narrow your world of prospective
So
bidders?
basically, what I would do is, I will contact the state Office of Policy and Management and ask them to send me a list of all the auditors that did engagements for 6/30/19. That way,
Yeah, sure.
I have a
Narrow.
pool, because it's a specialized service. Not
Mhm.
every accounting firm
Definitely.
has the resources to do this type of audit. And even some that are gonna be on the list from the state, they may be too small to do a community our size.
Okay.
So that's kinda how I would establish my base, and then we'll post it on our website as well.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. So, I'm done.
That's it?
That's it.
For,
It's only 8 o'clock.
6B.
Okay. So I think Mark is here to talk about the special appropriation for the fire marshal vehicle.
Yeah, that's the one I'm sticking around for. I can speak to it. Actually, Anna's probably even more qualified to speak to it. Our fire marshal's at a wake tonight, a family member. I think it's straightforward. It was, at least at the Board of Selectmen level, pretty straightforward. We bought this vehicle. It sits in storage, ready for it to be outfitted. We did not finance the outfitting of the vehicle last year. We knew when a vehicle came in, we'd scoop up the funding through different sources, and that's what you're seeing here tonight. A little background on the fire marshal's vehicle. We had traditionally bought Blazers, these SUVs. Like, I guess they're Blazers or Explorers. I think we buy Fords. And so it's a one vehicle. We don't do that anymore. It's best practice not to have the back portion, the storage portion, connected to the cab of the vehicle. When these firefighters, so we did this with the fire chief of Flanders got a new vehicle, and it was a truck as well, and we put a cap on it. And we're doing this with the fire marshal's office. If they're coming from a fire with all their gear that has soot and potential toxins, and almost always toxins, all over their equipment, it has to go in a separate compartment than the air in which they're driving in up front. So this is why we went to these pickup trucks, and the thought was to put a cap on it and put the necessary equipment in there, including the tools for a fire marshal to do his or her job. Light package is typical, and we're putting a sliding deck on because obviously these pickups, we're not 5-year-old kids anymore. You can't just jump up and crawl in and get stuff. This is a table that slides out on bearings. And beyond that, it's pretty straightforward. But you can see he got bids. I think there's a separate sheet Anna referred you to. That there's a more inexpensive route. So the quotes that are on the back printed on the back of the request for funding has been upgraded, and it's out in front of you there if there's any questions. Because this vehicle is in our inventory now. This was part of the capital package back in July, and it takes that long to get these things in the way we do it.
Does anybody have any questions for the first selectman regarding where the funds are recommended coming from, or when we bought the vehicle, or?
So the remaining balance of the $7,100, that was what was originally budgeted for the purchase of the truck without the cap.
So the purchase of the truck was funded through the acquisition program, and the total budget for the purchase of the truck was $35,000. And we actually paid $33,470 for the truck. So remaining in the acquisition program source of funding, we have $1,530. The action that is asking to use the remaining balance of the fire marshal vehicle account, that is actually in our capital and non-reoccurring fund.
Oh, okay.
At some point in the past, we had gone through the appropriations process for fire marshal vehicle. And so, because we're now talking about another fire marshal vehicle, I thought it made sense to, repurpose using those funds for this particular purchase. However, we can change the motion that's before you slightly. Instead of asking to use the remaining balance, we only need to use $6,711.69 from that account in order to be used with the remaining acquisition balance of $1,530. We do not need to do the additional appropriation and transfer of the $405.69 because the dollar amount that we used to move forward with the funding request, we had obtained quotes from one vendor because we needed some kind of a dollar ballpark to move forward. So once we started the funding process, I asked the vehicle mechanic to go out and get the remaining required quotes in accordance with the purchasing policy. And so that's where, how the numbers all came about.
Oh, okay. And if I understood our first selectman correctly, the truck was outfitted with the OEM features, but the cap was always intended to be added later as a customized feature in addition to the original purchase of the truck, that you don't buy it with the cap there.
We buy just the truck.
Just the
So we
truck.
don't have the lights on
Right.
it, obviously, we don't have the decal on it, obviously.
Right.
But, yeah, so this is the aftermarket, and any, obviously, every police car, we buy a base car.
Right.
It's, you know, they're specialty engines, so they are outfitted for the police inceptor you used to see on the side of cars. But we buy a standard car coming out of Detroit, specifically for police, and then they come in, and then we decal them and have them repainted or re-decaled, and all the radios and the cages and all those things that go into the police vehicles. Same thing here. We buy a very basic, too, by the way, very basic. And then add on from there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Part of this, you know, we've had some transition in the fire marshal's office as well. So one person writes the budget, the other person is the acting fire marshal, and some of that kind of got lost in translation too. Some of this probably should have been in the last year's capital. But typically in these cases, we are taking from the, we have a CNRE account for sold vehicles, and we sell a vehicle, we store the money for use, and that's where we're at here.
Oh, okay.
It's a small amount compared to our police car, which is about 20,000 outfit.
So I don't know if the board remembers this particular report that Anna had handed out a couple of months ago. It's the CNRE fund balance report, and this particular report gave the balances of leftover money from certain projects.
Right.
So I think it's important to understand that none of the money that's being requested to be appropriated for this is coming out of contingency or some other place in the
It's already
budget.
there.
It's kind of already
Right.
there.
Right.
So it's coming out of the CNRE fund, you're saying?
Yeah. So when Anna gives us an updated report of the CNRE fund, you could trace that $6,700 is gonna be coming out of the, what is it, the vehicle sold account, or whatever it's called.
This was
Or
vehicle-
fire marshal
marshal's
vehicle.
account, yeah.
So we won't be taking any proceeds from the sale of vehicles,
In
because.
this case, no.
Because the budget actually, or the estimate actually came in lower, the revised estimate.
You're gonna see a lot about CNRE late in the next item or two, about taking all
Yeah.
that funding and scraping it out. And this is one case. Instead of going back to the taxpayers and asking for more money, we have some put away, we're gonna take that money back.
Right.
So are there any further questions regarding this request? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion. Actually, I'll entertain the motion because I have the figures here,
That's fine.
and it gets a little confusing. So, I will move to authorize the use of the remaining balance of $6,711.39 in account 32-25-200-700-463 Fire Marshal Vehicle to account 32-25-200-700-463, the Fire Marshal Vehicle, to be used along with remaining acquisition balance of $1,530 to outfit the new Fire Marshal Vehicle with the necessary equipment to efficiently perform his duties. Oh, did I do it wrong?
Well, it's actually, no, it's actually 69 cents instead of 39.
69?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
You come back. See it again.
okay. Yeah.
$6,711.69.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, Ann Santoro seconds. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so next on the list, we have CNRE Fund 32 reallocation of completed projects. I guess we'll go in order.
Yeah, so actually, when what we did at the Board of Selectmen level, we discussed everything, and they just did this all as one motion. But I will go in and explain each one individually, but we can do it either way.
So I prefer to discuss them one at a time because
Okay.
I'm not sure that I like all of the ideas that are presented here.
Okay.
And I would like to discuss a few.
Okay.
So if we could skip around a bit and get an easy one out of the way.
Okay.
If it pleases the board, I'd like to jump to the CNRE Fund 32 Learn Reserve for $14,456. Okay, so let me just get to the write-up of that. Okay.
Would you want me to give like an overview of the fund and everything first, or do you just want to just discuss each of the motions independently? I mean, it's...
An overview of Fund 32?
Yeah, or do you think everyone is okay? Okay, okay, got it. Perfect.
Are you sure?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go with majority.
No, Peter, if you'd
No, that's
like a 2-minute overview? Well, I think it is a good idea, because I think that there may be a little bit confusion about what's sort of a balance sheet account and what's an operating expense account. So if you could explain the difference between the CNRE, as opposed to the other account numbers for operating expenses.
Okay, so, there's actually a Connecticut statute that allows cities and towns to establish capital and non-reoccurring funds. So based on the research that I did, this town established one back in 2000. In the earlier years, the town would actually do subsidies from the general fund to CNRE for public safety, town projects, public works projects, Board of Education projects, and open space. And now, as you know, if you went and looked at your budgets in Department 724, which is on page 26, I believe it's 26, yeah. So if you go to page 26 of your budget report, Department 724, the very first line item is called CNRE Municipal Projects, and this fiscal year, the subsidy was $185,730. So we, did an operating transfer out of the general fund into the CNRE fund for the projects that were defined for that $185,000. But then also in the fund, if we're going to get grants for various reasons, we appropriate the project in the fund. We also have collected learned rental fees for many years, and that was deposited in the fund. But the interesting thing is, it was tracked, I tracked it manually on a spreadsheet. We never put a budget account in CNRE that said learn reserve, so that at any point in time when the Board of Ed came to us, we could look at a budget report and see that dollar amount. It was all, tracked manually. So, anyway, so that's another issue. And then we also have, back in 2005, there was a mediated settlement for the roof on the pool building. And that $129,898 was deposited to the CNRE fund, and everybody knows it's there because every once in a while, I get a call from the Board of Ed to confirm the money is still there because they know, there's some continuity on the board, so they know the funds are available. But we never put it in a budget account. So when we look at the report, we don't see that resource is available in the fund. And then additionally, back in 2005, 2006, the state adopted a public act that said town clerks are going to collect a $3 fee for anything that's recorded in their office. Those dollars are to be set aside by the cities and towns for capital purposes in accordance with the rules of the LoCIP program. So those funds have been deposited to that fund, but we never set up a line item reserve. So that's one of the items we'll address this evening. And then a couple of other items that go into the fund: sale of vehicle money, it gets deposited to that fund. And then we know we recently established the police vehicle and equipment account. The source of funds for that is the vehicle fee that we charge on outside police overtime jobs. And then basically, I'm asking for three actions. One action is to reallocate funds that had been appropriated for various reasons over the years, the total of which is $334,297 and change, and make those funds, put those in like a town projects allocation account. The second piece, which is $75,629, those are funds that were appropriated for, like, let's say we were going to get a grant, and the grant was $5,000, but we didn't spend the total $5,000. We're not ever going to get that source of funding in the fund, so we should just zero those accounts out. That's what that piece is for. And the third piece is, over the years, the Board of Ed has come to the town and gone through the appropriations process for some LEARN dollars. And they have remaining balances of the $14,456. So that's another action. And then the final action is to establish reserve budget accounts, one titled LoCIP Reserve / Town Clerk, so we know what that source of funds is. One to park the pool roof funds in, and another one to park the remaining LEARN funds in. So this way, everybody, if I give you a report, those dollar amounts are all on it. So I think I've kind of covered the high-level summary.
Okay. So I actually spent some time today looking at some of these appropriations that Anna is proposing to reallocate. And I'm not sure that I agree with everything. That's why I would like to do this individually and not do it all together as a single motion. So I think the easiest thing to do is just to move forward with the easy ones, which would be the second one, move to close $75,000. So did everybody understand what that $75,629 represented? Are there any questions about that?
So I do have a question with that. Is that going to go to your general fund?
No, because
it's
those-
gonna stay, you still want it here?
No,
Okay.
those resources do not exist. So,
Okay.
in other words, what we did is, like, for example, we appropriated for, like, the first one, historic preservation enhancement. That was a grant, We never spent $126,000.93 of the grant. So
Okay.
we never received the money, we're never gonna receive the money, so we don't want it identified as
I
a
gotcha,
remaining
okay.
balance.
Yeah.
So we're
I
gonna,
see.
this is just to strictly
Okay.
zero the accounts out.
Yeah,
Okay. It's like they never existed, okay.
Yeah.
But I was confused. If you take, for example, the Public Works Department dump truck for $31,405, at some point that amount was appropriated, correct?
That was
But
from an
never spent.
It was from an acquisition program. So the first 2 years that we had the acquisition program, as we purchased the vehicles and submitted the request to the financial institution, they would book that part of our loan and send us the money. So in the earlier years, if you remember correctly, we did not do a very good job of estimating what the cost of the vehicles were. Now we have a better system, and our estimates are closer to what we actually plan to spend. So in those years, in those years, our appropriation was greater than the actual cost of the item. Now, when we do these, when we do the acquisition deals, they require us to close on the loan, they fund an escrow account, and we draw down from the escrow account as we make our purchases. So we're not using this methodology anymore. We just kind of changed the process. So we won't see any more of these type of items.
So in the PWD dump truck CNRE account, there is currently $57,681, or at least as of November 30th, 2019. The last report you gave us
Right.
showed $57,681. I see you've split that
Right.
between the top
Right.
schedule of 334 and the one below that where you're
Right.
saying
Oh,
we're-
that's
we're-
the research I had to do. Remember I explained that I actually, for every budget account, I did the research to determine how the funds were appropriated in the account. So sometimes there were multiple appropriations that all went into the one account. So I had to really, really look at that to make sure that this is being done properly.
I can imagine that was a lot of work, but I'm still confused
Okay.
about the $31,405. Those are real dollars that were appropriated at some point.
Well, we did an appropriation, but we didn't actually, we only received the money when we spent it. So we did not spend $31,000 of the original appropriated amount to purchase a dump truck under an acquisition program.
But we didn't spend the $26,276 either.
Right, but if you remember, when I talked about in the early years, when the fund was first established, every year, we did general fund subsidies for various categories, of which one of them was public works. So so now, if you think about it, we're doing the reverse of what we did back when we were doing subsidies into the CNRE to purchase public works vehicles. Now we do, we enter into financing agreements and we pay for it over 5 years. In the past, we would deposit cash resources into the fund until we built up enough money
to buy
make
it
the
outright.
purchases.
Right.
And what started happening is every year when the budgets went out and the boards decided we can't afford this kind of a mill rate, what they were doing is they would cut all of those subsidies into the CNRE. So then we didn't have money to purchase new
Right,
vehicles.
right.
So that's when we came up with the concept of doing the acquisition program.
Right.
Which, it was interesting because taxpayers that came to speak at meetings felt they liked it better that way because the taxpayers getting the benefit of the use of those vehicles by our town employees were actually paying for it. We weren't, people weren't contributing cash resources to pay for something that they may not benefit from in the future.
Right, right.
So, interesting.
So I think I need to ask my question a different way.
So is that, let me ask a question in the meantime. Is that $31,405 in the account? It actually exists, correct?
We have no there is no cash resource for that. That was an appropriation that was done, that we were, for an acquisition program where we overestimated what it was gonna cost for that dump truck by the $31,405. So the methodology that we used at that point in the acquisition program is we spent the money, we purchased the item, and we would send into the financing company, they would send us the money, we would deposit it to CNRE. So if we budgeted, like, let's say 62,000 and we only spent 31,000, we're not gonna get that money from the company. So if we left it in the fund and reallocated it, we really don't have the source of funds to pay for that. If that makes
So
sense.
why did you leave $26,276?
There were multiple actions that took place for that one budget account. So I had to research each of the different actions and determine.
So what happened in that action? We appropriated $50,000, used 24 of it, and there's 26 left over?
In that one.
In my mind, let's just put the whole $57,681 in that account into this non-transferable appropriation. Because it's already done.
But see, the difference is you put it into a reserve where it can be reappropriated in the future. That's what we're
But
looking
why?
to do. Pardon?
Why? If we didn't use it for its intended purpose, why are we saving it for another purpose?
Okay, so like, every year, through the general fund subsidy, we put money into CNRE for town projects. We don't always go and ask, take action to appropriate the funds out. And so the money rolls over from year to year. That's what is the case with this 26,000. So we, at some point in the past, we actually put the cash in the fund, so it's, the resource is available for us to spend.
It's because you have different sources for number one and number two, like the.
Correct, that's
the-
correct,
You know,
yes.
but
Yeah.
that's,
So the money was appropriated, it's available for use, but not for that project, because that dump truck, whatever is already done, that's just the leftover funds that are available to use for some other purpose.
Correct.
The 31,000 was never funded to begin with, and that's what you had to.
I would agree with that statement, yes.
right, yes, from the.
So we, yeah.
So if we didn't want to leave $276 in the first category, what would be an alternative for that? We could move it anywhere, couldn't we? Couldn't we move it to a contingency account?
Well, that's what, like, in a sense, that's what, like, the reserve is. It's like a form of a contingency, but for a specific purpose.
Right, but if we don't need it for that specific purpose, then it goes into a general contingency fund that doesn't get used by the end of the year, it can get returned to the taxpayer, right?
So the way that, see, the CNRE fund is, like, if you want to think, it's a perpetual fund. It it rolls over from year to year, unlike the general fund. And that's, I believe that's more than likely why the state legislature established that that statute, is so that it gave municipalities the ability to establish a fund that you would roll over from year to year and spend on purposes when you go, spend on for a specific purpose when you go through an appropriations process. Which is what we do when we want to spend funds from this fund. We,
Right. We get the funds from somewhere, wherever
Right.
it's coming from, contingency, wherever, and we appropriate it to like a CNRE account for a specific purpose. If we want to add to it, that's what we do in the middle of the year, right? Let's say that a dump truck broke down and we had to replace, $10,000 worth of parts and it wasn't budgeted for. Where do we get that money from? Don't we get that from contingency or,
So
and add it to that?
well, there are multiple, it depends on the methodology that we choose. So if we say, okay, for this particular repair, we don't want to use CNRE funds. We want to do the appropriation in the general fund from the contingency account. So that's what we would do. We would do, it would be a general fund appropriation. However, we might want to say, okay, so we have our CNRE fund and we have resources available from the sale of vehicles, so we'll go through the appropriations process and ask to use that source of funds. So there are multiple options. So this is just dealing with Fund 32, our capital non-reoccurring fund. It's taking, making a sweep of all appropriations that were done in the past where we have remaining balances that the intended purpose is done with. And
Okay.
So these actions will effectively leave the resources in the CNRE fund to appropriate at later dates for various purposes.
Right. Which we don't have to do.
Right, we can let the funds.
I just want everybody to understand that. So let's just get back to the $75,000 then. This is the money that it doesn't exist. It's just an entry on the accounting books, but the money isn't there and we just want to retire it, so to speak, get it off the books. But if we go down the LoCIP money, I thought that we rolled that money over from year to year.
Okay, so these are old appropriations. So at some point in the past, appropriations were done using a prior year entitlement. The projects are done. We haven't spent any money out of these budget accounts in years. Now, what I established last fiscal year is, because if you remember too, we used to budget that in the general fund as well. But because there's the continuity, it made sense for us to remove that grant from the general fund and now run it through CNRE. So I established a department, and I'd actually use the state grant numbers for the line item. And one line item has a balance available in the program that we have to appropriate, and then I list all the different projects that we've appropriated through the year. And that way it's clear. And then at the end, when we finish the project, any remaining balance we have, I'm going to put it back in that main account so that when you look at it, it's a good tool. You're going to know what projects we have outstanding and what our balance is, relative to the state. You can go on the state website, the balances should agree. So that's kind of, to me, that makes the most sense because, even for the LoCIP projects, I can't find it. I have the budget account set up by the state grant numbers they give us. So everything is going to match. Everything's going to tie out. It's on.
Which page, Anna?
So it's on page 2. So if you go down, you'll see 32-70-045. Are you looking at your CNRE report?
No.
No,
Oh, no, that's not in the
looking at-
general fund.
Okay, so you're
Okay,
looking.
no, it's in the CNRE fund.
Okay, so it's, I can share this, And you said it's on which page, Anna?
Page 2,
Of this report?
yes. So see where it says 32-70-045? It's kind of at the bottom.
Yes, okay.
Is this one they just handed
Yes.
out?
No, this was handed
LoCIP
out
projects and
4 months
LoCIP
ago.
project allocation
Okay,
funds.
I just happened to
Yeah.
bring it with me because I knew we were talking
Those
about
SIP
it.
roads?
Where's she looking? I'm sorry. Thank you.
LoCIP
So see the
project.
first account, which is called LoCIP Project Allocation Funds. So at that point, we have a balance of $13,396.44 that we could allocate for another project. So listed below it are all the different projects. The Niantic Fire Department parking lot and septic system. So 045, 019, 010, that is the state project number. So the last 9 digits of every account number in that LoCIP segment are the actual project numbers with the state. So we can see, the dollar amount, what's been expended, encumbered, what's left. So my thought is, this way, it's a useful tool for everyone, because everyone, it's clear how the funds are working, kind of thing.
Okay. I'll give somebody else a chance to ask some questions before I continue.
Anna, so the CNRE account is basically an account that doesn't lapse, we'll say. And so, and established by reason of state statute. I have not read those state statutes, but in your memo, you did say you spoke with Ed O'Connell, our town attorney. And so was the feeling that with respect to item,
See, I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure that what the motion, the actions that I was bringing to the boards, that, he felt they were, in accordance with, the statute and everything.
Right.
Because he is in the loop of getting the selectmen agendas, and, CNRE is one of the things that he really looks at to make sure that we follow the guidelines, and
Right.
so I wanted to make sure that what I was looking to do, he was in agreement with.
Okay.
And we did have that conversation.
yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I guess if we're perhaps wondering, could you, let's say, item 1, which is the larger dollar amount of over $300,000, $334,000 and more, could we put that somewhere else? But I don't know if there are some restrictions in those statutes that, it's basically a fund that's not going to, it has to remain in existence, unless for some reason, I guess I'm not sure. But I mean, when you had that conversation, did that come up? And that's why you felt like this would be appropriate to stay within the realm of capital projects?
Well, because that's the very purpose of the fund,
Of the
is,
fund,
for
okay.
to appropriate the funds
Right.
out for capital and non-reoccurring type
Right,
projects.
Right.
Yeah, but I guess I'm just having an issue with if we appropriate funds into a capital non-recurring account for a specific purpose, and then we don't spend all of the money for that specific purpose, then the rest should be released. It shouldn't be rolled over to be used for some other purpose, because every project that comes before us has to be vetted. And this way, if we're just simply rolling it over into another account where it can be accessed for different things.
Not without going through the appropriations process. Yeah,
You just
basically,
have a fund.
in the first part, you're just putting it back into the specific areas that the resources originally came from. So, there's, several accounts that are gonna go back into the townwide projects account. So when town projects come up, we're gonna have to go through the appropriations process, selectmen, finance, and possibly a town meeting. So
Yes, yes.
the money is not, just because we put it in townwide projects, doesn't mean we're just gonna go and spend it. We can't do that.
Well, I know it still has to be approved and go through the
Vetted.
approval process and vetted.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is that I wonder, it's just how many projects would come before us if there was no money for it? You would only come to us if there were money available for that,
I'm not really understanding your concern.
You're not
No.
understanding my concern?
No.
Okay.
Help-
So we
help
put-
me understand it.
Okay, so we put $100,000 in for a vehicle, a
Yeah.
specific vehicle, and it only costs 80,000.
Right.
So there's 20 left.
Right.
So why do we want to leave 20,000 in there for a future purchase of a vehicle, maybe, or a future purchase of some communication equipment, maybe?
But I think, if I could say, I think that the purpose of the CNRE account and the purpose of those state statutes establishing a fund like that is to be able to have a non-lapsing kind of fund for these purchases. So for example, like just pulling out the old, capital, the SIP, plan, and we have various sources of funding, for these capital projects. Two of which, one is capital non-recurring fund, the other is capital non-recurring LoCIP. So, it's not like we're not going to be doing a capital project, I mean, I know that we may have different intentions with that $20,000 that we freed up, but it still seems as though and maybe Mr. O'Connell could illuminate us a little on that, but I think the purpose of that statute is to try to maintain that kind of funding, so that the towns are taking care of these
Okay.
basic things.
I'm going to give a very, very specific example here. And it has to do with the Pine Grove Roads project for $246,900. 3270, 300, 500, 345. At some point,
That was large.
maybe even me, I don't know, the Board of Finance appropriated that money, $246,900, to pave, I guess, I don't know if it's pave or dig for sewers, I don't know what it was, Pine Grove Project roads. At some point, we appropriated that money for that specific purpose. The work was done, but we never spent that appropriated amount, correct? The work was done, we paid for it out of another fund.
That's correct.
So every year, this board generally approves $900,000, I believe, for road reconstruction. So it's like approving it twice. We approved the $240,000 for Pine Grove, but we didn't use the money for the intended purpose. We pulled it out of the $900,000 amount that we always appropriate
know
for
what?
town roads.
Well, I mean,
So why is this still here?
so actually,
Or if it is, let's reduce
The
the
900,000.
900 in this budget cycle to 650,000.
So actually, this predates the annual, the funding that we've been
Allocation for the
putting. This was done, it predates
Okay, so
that.
makes some
And it kind of like predates me as well, so I don't
Yeah.
have an answer as to, I do know, because I went and I looked, I had to look in the town clerk's office to, to confirm and all of that. Like I said, I don't know why it wasn't expended, but at the point, our purpose here is to do a clean sweep of the fund so that, like, all the balances that we're not gonna use for those originally intended purposes, we remedy that now. And so, going forward, I'm going to, like, at the end of the fiscal year, really look at each account and say, okay, these need to stay open at this point in time. So if I do it annually, we're not ever gonna have to go through this magnitude of
Right.
cleaning the
Because
fund out.
this is quite a large effort I do appreciate all the research
So-
that you did, even prior to when you started working here. I do, but I think you understand where I'm coming from now, right?
yeah.
Right.
Every year, 900,000 for road reconstruction.
Right.
If we have this money available, why are we still approving that much in the capital plan? We could reduce it by this much.
Or is there any way, I mean, I don't know, if you have the, what is it, 334,000, can that be used towards, like, the budget for next year? I mean,
Well,
if it's
that-
not,
So that's a question I guess we're trying to, I think that's the issue that we're trying to get to here by
I mean, if we can find more money, that would,
But I-
you know,
Yeah, but I guess the point is.
not increase the mill rate.
You know, perhaps we need that clarification, if there's some, this is what I was just thinking, if there's some requirement in that state statute, when you establish an account like this, and you're, you know, you don't use the dollars, what happens to that? I mean, if there's some answer, you know, legal answer to it, or some statutory answer to it, that would be helpful, I think. It doesn't mean that you can't go ahead and clean up, as you've suggested. I think you could, you know, possibly do what you want to do with these various motions, but that we maybe need some clarification on. If we, for example, you know, do it this way, so if there's this amount in here, you know, could it exit this CNRE account? So I just feel like I need that little bit of clarification on that. But it doesn't mean we can't, again, clean up where we can.
So I'd see this as, this is probably a first step in cleaning up these CRNE accounts, that at least at this point, we've got things transferred into non-spendable, that those are dollars that don't exist, that they were excess grant things that we just didn't use the grant. So we've at least cleaned it up to that, what we have in the CRNE reports are real dollars, rather than perhaps monopoly money, because it was stuff that we just, it didn't really exist. It was what the grant was, but we didn't spend the whole grant. And then the next stage would be then to investigate these accounts that we've got them in, let's say the townwide projects, can those be reallocated to something else? You know, I don't see this as a finished project, but a two-step process, that you've gone through, you've cleaned this up, you've eliminated the things that don't exist, and then we have these other ones where they're under their original accounts, but then we need clarification as to how they can get transferred and how it meshes with the general fund that we budget each year, as to whether any of this could help reduce the budget.
So I like that. I like where you're going with that.
At least we have a step right now that we can clean this up.
So I have a proposal that I would like to put forward to this board, in that let's vote on a couple of these tonight that we feel comfortable with, and not vote on the big one, the 334,000. Let's spend some time thinking about that. I think it's very easy to push forward through something when you don't really research it too much. So this board is all about research and making sure that we're doing the best we can for the taxpayers, even though it's not easy. So how does that sound? Let's vote on the $75,000 portion, get that off the books. I have an idea for the school funds, the $14,000. I'd like to propose something different for that, and I think those two we can accomplish tonight, and then put the first one on a subsequent agenda. And after we make some approvals tonight with this sheet, maybe get an updated version of this then?
Mm-hmm.
How does that sound?
So what specific, just so that I understand, what specifically, are you asking, like, so the $334,000, are you saying, so if we free this up from projects, we want to transfer it to the general fund to as like, like an operating transfer in from CNRE to subsidize, as a revenue, to subsidize next year's budget? Is that what you're looking to accomplish?
Well, in my mind, I just was thinking, and as I would, before we even got into the weeds on this, I mean, I just kind of wanted that legal question answered, because I hadn't gone and read the statutes or anything related to those statutes. For me, it was, okay, this looks like a nice amount of money. I see that we're trying to put it back, as we should maintain a CNRE account. But I'm wondering, can we take it and use it elsewhere? So the 334 and change thousand. So for me, it's just the narrow legal question. Are we required to keep this sum in CNRE by virtue of state statute, some other requirement, whatever? And I think that, that's a question, for town attorney. I mean, I get the whole purpose of the statute and all that, but, and I'm okay with most of the rest of what I have seen here, in terms of what you're doing with the 75,000 accounting wise and so forth. Anyone else have that same question? Ann, did you have that question as well?
Well, I guess basically that's what I was getting at, is can we use this money
just
for something else? I
and
mean,
we
because
required to-
everybody's requesting, huge
Right.
budget for next year, and
Yeah.
I'm like, well, if we can use some money so we don't have to increase the mill rate,
Right.
then, that's a win-win for everybody.
Right.
So, yeah, that's exactly my question, is can that money be used for any other purpose besides
I mean,
putting it back in,
I mean, that-
keeping it in the CNRE?
that's the narrow legal question. There's also a policy question. You have a capital, a CNRE account, capital non-recurring account. What should you maintain there? And, or are you just gonna keep having to pull things from all over the place? So, and it is a source that we use when you look at the long-term capital
Right.
plan. It's one of the funding sources. So I think you have to look at it from that perspective, but I do think there's that, I'll say, narrow legal question that perhaps should be answered.
And I think to Camille's point, if there's essentially a double payment for projects from the general fund, like the Pine Grove Road thing versus our 900K that we do for roads out of the general fund, if there's situations like that where it looks like we've got redundant funding within the capital non-reoccurring and the general fund, those I think would be the target issues to maybe examine a little bit further. But like what Ann was saying, I think by statute we really do need to maintain that the accounts in the fund to be able to appropriate for capital items in the future. But just where there's the redundancies, I think we need to examine those.
Yeah, the redundancies, this is old money, this isn't happening now.
Right.
And-
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so it's sort of old money that we're just trying to clean up. I'm not necessarily suggesting we take it and spend it on the electric bill. I'd rather spend it
Right.
on another
Some
capital
item.
expense, yeah.
Right. I think that's
So,
the purpose.
that's not the direction I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Because when we do spend it on something capital, it's less money that has to come out of the operating budget for that year, so it is still helping the taxpayer, it's just how it's budgeted. But I'm not in favor of taking this old found money and putting it into the general fund. I like the idea of moving it from one savings account to another, if you will.
I mean, I'm thinking along the
And
same.
you're just asking
I'm
what
just
the
asking
options
that,
are.
and particularly because
Whether
it came up by others as
Yeah,
well, by
what
Camille and
the
so
options
forth.
are, yeah.
If there are options,
Yeah.
if you have to plug some hole.
Yeah, and it's
such
okay to
as
know what the
health
options
Yeah, so we
are.
don't even know what the options are, so,
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
it's.
We
you
know
what
we
I
can
mean?
keep it in the CRE.
Yeah,
Right.
that, but if there's any other options,
Right, it would be good
Which
to
is-
know.
Yeah,
Now-
because then you can kind of,
This report shows
Determine.
$1.3 million
It's good.
in the balance of these CNRE accounts. So if we pull out 400, we're still positive 900. It's not like we're depleting the CNRE. We are just being realistic as to the needs and the future wants.
I don't think we're gonna have any trouble finding places to spend the money.
No,
on.
we won't.
No.
Not this year.
That's what I'm saying, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna have any trouble finding a need.
So does the board feel comfortable postponing a decision on the 334 until a later date?
So when you say a later date, like, what are you
Next month.
thinking? Because we're gonna be dealing with all the, deliberating and and
Well-
deliberating on the budget, so.
Well, next week will be pretty easy, because all we have to do is listen and ask questions. There's no decisions when we get the budget presentations. I hope there aren't any other appropriations coming onto our agenda next week when we have presentations.
They're just, the budget agendas are strictly relative to the proposed budget.
Okay, so good.
Mhm.
So it's not gonna be as difficult as tonight,
Mm.
with all of these decisions. It's gonna be listening to a presentation, asking questions, making sure we understand, what the ask is.
Mhm.
So we could revisit this, we could revisit this after we set the mill rate in May. We don't have, this is a non-recurring account, so it's not like we only have until the end of the year to decide. We can decide it in June if we wanted to, or July.
Clean up some of the
Yeah.
monopoly money, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been going on for 10 years. I don't see another few months, So with that, I would like to talk about cleaning up some of it so that it's more manageable the next time we get presented with it. Does that sound okay?
Mhm.
So I am fine with all of the dollar amounts adding up to 75,629. And so I am just going to move to close $75,629.41 in completed CNRE Fund 32 projects as identified in Schedule 1, CNRE Fund 32, close projects scheduled to 0 with no remaining funds available for future appropriation. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right. So that's one we can take off the list. To make this simpler next time it comes around. Now, the next category of items, East Lyme High School A-Wing sprinkler installation, contingency, ELHS boiler system, architect, ELM elementary schools. These were funds that were appropriated for a specific purpose that did not get spent in its entirety. Correct, Anna?
Yes.
And so you are suggesting that what are you suggesting? That we transfer it to a Learn Reserve account to be opened later on in the
No, an existing.
in the
one.
agenda.
Yeah, well, the problem is, like I was saying earlier, there was never a budget account that was established that, where we parked all the funds that were deposited, so that anyone that looked at a budget report would know, like in our accounting system, would know that so much of, the funds were from
Right.
Learn Rents, whereas, so it makes sense to me to just have it in that budget account. So
Okay.
this way, anyone that looks at the report knows it's there.
Okay, so, let me give a quick synopsis about what's going on with this East Lyme High School turf field replacement. Years ago, I think you'll remember, the board appropriated $500,000, however much money it took to replace the field at the high school with a turf, like a, what is it called?
AstroTurf.
AstroTurf,
Yeah.
thank you. So the expected life of that particular field, as I recall, is about 10 years. And then it needs to get replaced, depending on wear and tear. So every 10, 15 years, perhaps, we'd be looking at having to fund another $500,000 to replace this turf field. Now, the thought when it was being sold to us was that there was going to be all these savings because there wouldn't be groundskeeper maintenance. There wouldn't be fertilizer, or, cutting the grass or this or that. There would be some savings that went along with it. There would also be some revenues that we could secure through advertising on the field. Not really sure that ever came to fruition, but we do ask about this on occasion, the Board of Finance, about this, how are we going to replace this when it comes around? So that is on this CNRE fund report, and it's the very last item, ELHS turf field replacement. There's $25,000 in that account, in the CNRE account. I don't think that's gone up for a long time. So I would like to propose that 14,456.85 gets added to the turf field replacement CNRE account.
As I recall, let me think back to, I think it was the Board of Education, did that money come from them last year, setting up that 25,000?
It did, yes, that's
A
correct.
few years ago,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, this is, I was on the board, that was when I was on the board.
Okay, so I do know that it did come from
Yeah. and
the
it-
board. I don't remember.
Because I think the questions, when I had started on the board, I think the questions were always to Mr. Newton, have we established, where are the funds gonna come from? So I think we all pestered him quite a bit, so I think the board, I think they decided, establish something, put something in, and that was like the seed money for that particular endeavor, for that project.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if it's something that they should own and not the town. Do you know what I'm saying?
So
I'm
I will say
wondering.
that I had a quick conversation
Okay.
with Mr. Newton prior to the meeting, and I asked him how he felt about it, and he said, fine, go for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Found money.
I would
Yeah,
imagine
really.
that he would, yeah.
I was gonna say no to $14,000.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I don't think he knew anything about this $14,000 tonight, so I think maybe that's did you discuss that with Mariana?
Oh, yes, I did.
Mhm.
I told her what we were working on doing, and that the plan was to establish a budget account within the fund titled Learn Reserve, and that there would be the 204,000.
So, Anna, I guess I just don't understand why we would have a Learn Reserve Fund. Like, what does that even mean? Because we don't have Learn revenues coming in?
Right, but the source of those funds was from the Learn rents, and from time to time, when the Board of Ed had capital needs that was not budgeted for in their budget, they would come to the town and go through the appropriations process to use those funds for whatever. I think the biggest item they did was probably the boiler system at the high school. That
Yeah.
was a big
Yeah.
undertaking, and, they used,
So.
I just don't think we're not taking the money away from them.
Mm-hmm.
It's still their CNRE fund.
But we're telling them how to spend it, as opposed to putting it in a fund that they can decide how to spend it. Is that,
Are we
That-
allowed to do that?
right.
that's what the difference is?
Yeah, no, but is that within our
Rather than them
purview?
deciding how to spend it, we're telling them how to spend it.
But we're not spending it. All we're doing is reallocating it to a
To a
different.
specific fund, rather than a fund
mean,
that they
it's-
can decide how to spend it.
So
I just wanna
then,
make sure
so then perhaps
it- it-
Anna can go back to Mariana and get her blessing
Yeah,
for that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
And then
think
we'll do it at a later
they
date.
should
mean-
have some input on that.
Well, I
No?
was going
That's
to
what I got.
suggest that, because it has really been our practice relative to the Learn funds. They've been deposited to that fund, and the Board of Ed comes before Selectmen, Finance, Town Meeting, whenever, in the past, when they wanted to spend the funds. So, moving, like I said, the original intent was park it in an account, Lauren Reserve, so that the Board of Ed could come and make requests to spend the money on future items. So I think it would be better to have the Board of Education involved in such a radical shift in philosophy, if you will.
Oh, I don't think it's a radical shift in philosophy. We are not telling them how to spend their money in an operating budget. This is a CNRE account, it's a capital account. We have full ability to determine how much money they get for their projects in the capital plan. We have the full ability to say if they wanted $1 million for the technology plan and the capital plan, we have the full ability to say, no, you can't have $1 million, you can have 800,000. That's the capital plan. It's separate and distinct from the operating budget. So that's where I differ with you by saying that this is radical. I don't think it's so radical, but I don't want to step on anybody's
Maybe I-
toes.
I
That's
don't know,
why.
and I don't know that $14,000 is radical in anybody's mind, and so,
And
but
I thought I
just
did
think
get a
from
BOE blessing.
working relationship standpoint, I
Yeah.
think, to,
Better said.
you know,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
you
fine
know,
with
you know,
that.
not to
Good
micromanage.
town and gown relations.
Not to 14, I mean, if we're, but I do like the idea of recommending it for the turf fund, because we have harassed the Board of Ed. and
Yeah.
said,
We're just trying to
that's
help.
That's,
We're trying to help them out.
right,
Mhm.
and I think we should, and that's how it can be presented.
Mhm.
We're right, we like I like the idea of the turf fund,
Yeah.
because we've been, I remember that discussion a couple of years ago.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's where we would like to see it go, but I think in terms of having a working relationship with them, I think
I think that's
we should
fair.
make it in a vacuum.
I think that's fair.
Mm.
Well received.
Okay. I'm a Libra,
So I don't
Right.
understand
Okay.
that.
So that'll come back to us at a later date
No, of
too.
course.
Yeah.
Are we past overtime hour?
Yes,
10
I think,
o'clock?
I think we should begin, we're like 15 minutes past. So I think that,
There's more to be pointed out.
I agree with you what you said.
Did he? I don't know. He wouldn't read.
let me see what's left on the agenda.
The department transfers.
Okay. Well,
What's next?
I could talk for 30 minutes on department transfers, so I think maybe that should be rescheduled as well. Am I correct in saying that it looks like the transfers were already made?
They're ratified transfers, yes, so they were. Can I just, so there was one other item, move to create reserve budget account. So, are you not gonna do that tonight, or?
No, let's wrap that in with the next time also. At least we got one of those resolved, the 75,000.
Although, if I could say, I mean, the one for the LoSiP reserve, because it was established, that was also a state statutory program. That might be, that's something we can, if we don't do it tonight, could readily be, I think, agreed upon maybe.
That wasn't the $3 fee that you were talking about that gets collected that you're looking.
Yes.
Oh, it
That
is
is.
that?
Yeah.
That simple thing that
Yeah,
was,
it
okay.
is, and then the
All right,
full
we,
roof goes into
okay, we
it,
could
too.
do that.
Yeah.
But it's all together, so I don't know if we want this learn reserve thing.
Right, so.
If you want to break it up and just do LoSiP and we didn't talk about the EL
Yeah, we didn't.
high
talk
school
about that,
pool roof
which is a
reserve,
whole nother
that doesn't
chapter.
exist.
Well, the funds were deposited into CNRE, but that was based on a legal arbitration ruling. So, I mean, I
So
think
where is it sitting now?
Yeah, I couldn't.
it was deposited in the fund, so it's not noted in any budget
Yeah,
account.
because I couldn't
Yeah.
find it.
Right,
Yeah.
no, you wouldn't.
Okay.
Okay, and that was some time ago, right? I think that was
Yeah, it
2005.
was way back.
Yeah, and
So it's off book, you're saying?
2005.
Yeah,
Oh,
there
wow.
was a legal
So
settlement.
how much money are we talking about that?
129,898 was,
And so
that
you-
settlement.
You just want to create a CNRE account so that we can track it visibly?
Correct.
Okay, all right, so we can do 1 and 2.
Mhm.
Can we just do 1 and 2 and
Yeah, sure.
leave 3 for later?
Sounds good.
Okay. So I will move to create a reserve budget account in CNRE Fund 32 for the following purposes. 1, LoCIP Reserve Town Clerk, and 2, East Lyme High School Pool Roof Reserve.
I'll
Is there a
second it.
second? Okay, great. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion carries. Thanks. Okay. All right, so we will reschedule the ratified departmental transfers for $308,000 for the next meeting. We've already discussed the 2021 budget. We took care of the audit service, Anna, and your Director of Finance report, so we're good there. Old business, public safety building project update. Ann, do you have any
Yeah,
updates?
just really quickly, we have not had another meeting as a vision committee since last month, but happily, we're out to bid. We're bidding the project. We were on the state site. The documents went out, I believe, were for bid around February 25th, and the bids are due March 31st. Yesterday morning, there was a pre-bid walkthrough which took place at the site led by Brian Cleveland, the architect from Silver Petroselli, who's the lead architect here. And it was a very good crowd. The room was full, and we had both, I believe, general and subcontractors in this group. Everyone signs in. Brian said he recognized, at least 4 general contractors out of that group, and again, a number of subcontractors were there. So once the bids do come in, Vision Committee will look at those bids, assess, and make some recommendation. We have some other business to handle as well, but that's the most important thing we'll be doing. Following yesterday's meeting, there was a meeting with Brian and Chief Mike and the IT folk, IT and communications, trying to wrap up that piece and getting the state to give their final dollar figure, if you will, for the work that has to be done. So we're in good shape time-wise, and that's all I have at this point. I think Mr. Daigle, who chairs the Vision Committee, will probably call a meeting soon as we go through some other things we have to discuss. But I was just personally really happy to see that the project was out to bid, and thank you, Anna. And I know Bill Scheer worked with Brian Cleveland and the architectural firm to get those documents together. You can go to the state website. It's biznet, all one word, biznet.ct.gov, and you can see the documents. And the project number is 2020-01. So when you're short on reading the next couple of weeks, and you really are looking for something, I'm just serious. It's pretty detailed, but as you know, most of the documents have been. So, but you can find everything there, insurance requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So. Yeah, we're in a good place with our own process as a committee. So that's that. Thanks.
Okay. All right, thank you. Action item list.
It's in your green, put it in your green folder.
Yeah, that was in
And I
here.
talked about the couple of items that I need to do for you in the future.
Any questions on the action item list?
No.
Okay, great. Moving on, public discussion. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address the board?
you don't want to talk?
No, come on. There's gotta be
Okay.
a comment.
All right. Hearing no requests, we'll move on to board comments. Any board comments this evening?
Just one thing. I was very happy to go to our library meeting. I thought we had a really good meeting, a good exchange of information, and very appropriate, you know, from the library. They just gave us a good overview of their operation, and we walked through, and you could see things and understand their situation. So I thought that was good. And just as I thought our more or less individual walkthroughs at the Flanders Fire Department were also very helpful. So, I mean, to me, those were two good examples of how we can exchange information, but we're still maintaining our oversight, you know, so I'm very happy with that. And I'm sure it'll be helpful as we're reviewing those budgets.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Ann.
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
See a lot of each other in the
I'll make
next
a motion
couple
to
of weeks,
adjourn.
right?
Is
I'll
there-
second it.
Okay, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
What time is it?
Abstained? It is 10:20.